Chapter 33-32. However, whenever the news of cities being invaded came, the East Wave monarch couldn't sit still anymore. He was a smart man. He could tell how much the overlord doted on the emperor lady. Therefore, the East Wave monarch wouldn't use any righteousness to persuade the overlord. Instead, he used the emperor lady. As expected. After hearing about the emperor lady, the overlord slightly raised his eyes under the mask. That cold and sharp gaze was like a sharp blade that pierced straight into his heart. The East Wave monarch felt a chill down his spine and cold sweat rolled down his forehead. It's because little Luo wants to play that I didn't destroy the East Wave continent. Dmo Xian pursed his thin lips. His voice was so cold that it made one's hair stand on end. The fear in the East Wave monarch's heart rose to the peak. The other cultivators hated Hao Nanren even more. Overlord, the one who has been targeting the Emperor Lady and instigated her to enter the Forbidden Area is the sect master of the Jade Dome sect. We will hand the sect master of the Jade Dome sect to the Overlord and let him do whatever he wants. The East Wave continent will not complain. We only hope that the Overlord can save us. Yes. It's the sect master of the Jade Dome sect's fault. He forced the Emperor Lady to enter the Forbidden Area. We will throw the sect master of the Jade Dome sect into the Forbidden Area and let him find the Emperor Lady. As the Profounders spoke, they swarmed towards Hao Nanren's direction. Hao Nanren's behavior had completely annoyed the people of the East Wave continent. The Overlord's name was right there. They would rather offend Hao Nanren. They didn't want to offend the Overlord. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you touch me? Hao Nanren didn't expect that the group of cultivators would suddenly attack him. Hao Nanren scolded them with a red face. However, he was directly flipped over by a group of people and pressed onto the ground. No matter how Hao Nanren yelled, those cultivators refused to let go. Hao Nanren was the sect master of the Jade Dome sect. His profound grade was extremely high and he wasn't weak. But after all, he couldn't fight against all sides. Especially, he didn't believe that this group of cultivators from small forces would dare to make a move against him. The entire area outside the Forbidden Area was in a hubbub and chaos. At this moment, suddenly there was a loud explosion. Following this, countless bird-type demonic beasts flapped their wings and dyed the sky pitch black. The smell of blood and slaughter began to spread. A terrifyingly powerful dark force emanated from the surroundings. This caused everyone in the surroundings to stop what they were doing and look towards the horizon in shock. The East Wave Sovereign's face turned pale. Not good. The people from the Palace of Gloom are here. Dark Nether Palace. The profound practitioners who stayed behind cried out in shock. Why did the people from Dark Nether Palace attack here? Could it be that they have already occupied Jade Dome City? That's not right. The East Wave Sovereign's expression was solemn as his gaze swept towards the entrance of the Forbidden Grounds. Their goal is to seal the entrance of the Forbidden Grounds and prevent the Imperial Madam from leaving. The profound practitioners panicked. How did they know that the Imperial Madam was in the Forbidden Area? Is there a spy? Suddenly, a scream rang out from the crowd. A profound practitioner was sent flying. Following this, a giant bird beast swooped down from the sky and grabbed onto the profound practitioner's shoulder, lifting him into the air. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, countless birds and beasts rushed towards the profound practitioner. Chapter 33-33. It floated down from the sky. Only the torn pieces of the profound practitioner's clothes remained. All the profounders exclaimed in surprise, and their gazes were filled with astonishment as they looked at the birds and beasts that filled the sky. This group of birds and beasts were so ferocious. They were so fast that they couldn't even react. Screech! After tasting the human blood, the birds and beasts cried out in excitement. Huge birds and beasts were circling in the sky. The sharp eyes of the beast seemed as if it was staring at its prey as it stared fiercely at the profounders below. Someone is coming. The cultivators were in this strange atmosphere. A group of people walked in from the outside of the faintly discernible enchantment. There were about 30 people in that group. The person walking at the front was a woman in a black robe with an exquisite figure. The woman slowly walked to the entrance of the Forbidden Area and fixed her gaze in the direction of the entrance. Is it here? The woman's voice was seductive. A burly and expressionless man behind her nodded. The woman waved her hand. Go, set up the array formation and seal the entrance. The rest of you kill everyone here. The woman's arrogant words. It stunned everyone present. They looked at the clothes of the woman and the 30 people behind her. They were from the Palace of Darkness. Who was this woman? She wanted to kill all of them with just 30 people? Were the people from the Palace of Darkness so arrogant? However, there was no time for everyone to be shocked. As the woman gave the order, the people behind her moved quickly. The birds and beasts in the sky also swooped down. The expressions of the cultivators changed drastically and they panicked. They started to deal with the people from the Palace of Darkness who had suddenly barged into the forbidden area. They couldn't care less about how Nanren who had fallen to the ground. These 30 people were not humans at all. They were corpse puppets. The 60 or so people who stayed behind to guard the place were all profound practitioners who couldn't be considered to be very strong. They had no chance of winning against these corpse puppets. In addition, there were 2 new corpse puppets. They rushed towards the entrance of the forbidden area and started to set up the array formation in an orderly manner. For a moment, the back mountain of the Jade Dome sect was filled with blood. Blood-curdling screams rose and fell. Looking at the 2 majestic undead corpse puppets fiddling with the array formation, the East Wave Sovereign's face turned pale with fright. He immediately looked at DMO Shen who had unknowingly hidden in the dark. The secluded Darkness Palace obviously intended to stop Yiqing Luo from walking out of the forbidden grounds. What's wrong with His Majesty? Isn't he going to make a move? Instead, he allowed the monster from the Palace of Darkness to set up a formation at the entrance? The East Wave Sovereign could not understand this at all. What on earth was the Overlord thinking? Hearing the miserable screams in his ears as well as the screams of countless profound practitioners, telling him to quickly flee, he felt a chill run down his spine. The East Wave Sovereign's body was trembling. His hands, which were hanging by his side, suddenly clenched. When he looked up again, his eyes were filled with determination. He strode towards the direction where DMO Shen was hiding. He took a step forward. Suddenly, an oppressive force attacked him from behind. His wrist was tightly gripped by an extremely strong hand. Immediately after, an ice-cold sensation pressed against his neck. Don't even think about asking the Overlord for help. Hao Nanren's cold voice was heard beside his ear. The East Wave Sovereign was stunned as his body stiffened. What are you doing? Chapter 33-34. Are you crazy? The East Wave Sovereign's pupils contracted as he roared in disbelief. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness wants to trap the Empress in the Forbidden Grounds because they are afraid that she will affect their plans to invade the East Wave continent. If we really let the Dark Nether Palace form the formation, the entire East continent will be destroyed. Hao Nanren grinned maliciously as he tightened his grip on his struggling body. This sect master doesn't believe that without her, the East continent will be destroyed. This sect leader is the sect leader of one of the 4 great sects. Can't you deal with the Palace of Darkness? Generally speaking, Yiqing Luo walked into the Forbidden Grounds. Most likely he had died inside. He told the people of the Dark Abyss Palace to set up a formation to seal the entrance of the Forbidden Land. It was safer. Hao Nanren naturally wouldn't stop them. Looking at the 2 men, they quickly set up the array formation. It was obvious that the formation was extremely complicated. In his heart, he was faintly hoping that Yiqing Luo had not died in the Forbidden Grounds. He did not die, but he could not walk out of the Forbidden Land. It felt like he was trapped in the Forbidden Land until he died. This was true despair. The East Wave Sovereign's face was extremely pale. The sharp blade on his neck had already cut through his skin. The stinging sensation caused him to scrunch up his face. The East Wave Sovereign glanced at the elegant and noble figure in the darkness from the corner of his eye. The blood-curdling screams became increasingly shrill in his ears. There were fewer and fewer profound practitioners from the forces who were still alive. No. He couldn't let the headmaster of Abyss Palace continue like this. No matter what the Overlord was thinking. He couldn't wait any longer. As long as the Palace of Gloomy Darkness knew that Dizun was here, he would definitely not dare to act rashly. I advise you to behave yourself and not play any tricks. Hao Nanren threatened the East Wave Sovereign as if he had sensed that something was wrong with the East Wave Sovereign's aura. The East Billow Monarch's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand and grabbed Hao Nanren's arm. Then he opened his mouth and shouted towards the direction of the darkness. Emperor. One word came out of his mouth. There was a sharp pain in his wrist. Hao Nanren grabbed the East Wave Sovereign's arm. Then he melted the dagger in his hand. You're back. Suddenly the concealed DMO Shen slowly opened his mouth. His voice was very soft, very low. If not for the fact that Hao Nanren and the East Wave Sovereign were so close to each other, she probably couldn't even hear the 3 words that floated out of his mouth. And it was precisely because of these 3 words of DMO Shen. Hao Nanren's hand that was holding the dagger froze. Not good. The female leader of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness suddenly looked at the entrance of the Forbidden Grounds in fear. She strode toward the two undead puppets. Quick! We have to be fast. However, before the woman could finish her words, her coquettish and charming face instantly turned ashen. Bang! In the air, the sound of explosions was deafening. The surrounding air seemed to be squeezing a huge amount of energy. The astral wind suddenly rose and enveloped the entire back mountain. Everyone could feel it clearly. The ground beneath his feet trembled and slowly cracked. The gigantic birds and beasts that filled the sky suddenly let out fierce roars. Another wave of rapid flapping of wings could be heard. Tight and tight. Swish, swish, swish. The birds and beasts seemed to have lost all their vitality and fell from the sky. The dark sky that was covered by the birds and beasts once again regained its original brightness. What's going on? How did these birds and beasts die? All dead, all the birds and beasts died just like that. Chapter 33-35. They were not the only ones who were shocked. The people from the Palace of Gloomy Darkness were also stunned by this scene. They knew the power of the birds better than anyone else. But now, they didn't even see who did it. Hundreds of birds and beasts died just like that. The woman's face darkened. She frowned and stared at the sky. But at this moment, the sky was once again shrouded in darkness. What's going on? Are the birds here again? The profound practitioners looked around in panic. But the woman's face was not one of joy at the arrival of reinforcements. Instead, it was one of paleness and gloom. That majestic power was getting closer and closer. Fierce astral winds constantly collided with the surrounding air. The huge dark force was monstrous. Roar, roar, roar. Suddenly, the deafening roar of beasts rose and fell. Everyone saw rows of neatly organized shadows rapidly approaching from the horizon. Looking at the silhouette, looking at the size, it should be a beast that moved on 4 legs. But why would a beast that moved on 4 legs appear in the sky? The orderly rows of shadows covered the sky. Suddenly, a green light appeared. The flickering azure light lit up the dark sky with sparkling light. After that, a deafening dragon roar reverberated throughout the back mountain. Roar, roar, roar. The beasts growled in unison to show their respect. Then a green dragon gathered and circled the sky. Pieces of green dragon scales glowed brightly, full of power. A powerful pressure pressed down on him. Dragon. That's a dragon. The woman looked at the green dragon circling the sky in shock. She could not hide the shock on her face. The 2 new undead corpse puppets were so intimidated by this majestic aura that they stood rooted to the spot, staring at the sky without blinking. The profound practitioners who were still alive, as well as Hao Nanren and the East Wave Sovereign, were shocked by the scene in the sky. They could not believe what they were seeing. Were they dreaming? Dragon. It's really a dragon. The dagger in Hao Nanren's hand slipped. He stood up slowly and looked at the giant dragon in the sky. The supreme dragon. Why would it appear here? The last time a dragon appeared in the Nirvana realm, it was in the West Continent that the 7th Miss of the Night had demonstrated it once. After that, they never saw the dragon summoned by the 7th Miss of the Night again. Wait a minute. Yi 7th Miss equals Yi Qing Luo equals Imperial Madam? Madam D had a dragon. Could this enormous azure dragon be Lady D's dragon? No, that's not right. They had heard of Madame D's dragon. It was a blue dragon whose entire body was azure blue, although they had never seen it with their own eyes. However, that was the first time a dragon had appeared in the Nirvana realm. It had long been spread throughout the entire Nirvana realm, no matter how big or small. Lady D's dragon was undoubtedly a blue dragon. Then this azure dragon, why did it appear here? The huge azure dragon rapidly approached. Only then did everyone realize. There was a vague figure standing on the head of the azure dragon. Amidst the wild gales, that figure's robes fluttered in the wind, making him look like an immortal. One of the corpse puppets looked at the dazed woman and said, "We're too late." Too late? What does that mean? The woman knew this very well, but she was unwilling to accept it just like that. Just at the next moment, that huge dragon's head pressed towards the woman. The dragon's roar soared into the sky, shaking the entire mountain. Chapter 33-36. Following the dragon's breath, it sprayed downwards. It brought about a huge sense of oppression. That voice made the East Wave Monarch and the surviving cultivators present revealed a joyous expression. As for Hao Nanren and those people from the dark forces, their faces turned pale instantly. The lady's petite body swayed uncontrollably as her legs suddenly went soft as she fell onto the ground. This was fear from the bottom of her heart. When the green dragon approached and lowered its head, everyone could clearly see that blazing figure on the dragon's head. It's Madame D. Madame D really came out. Madame D is actually sitting on the dragon. Don't tell me this dragon is Madame D's war pet. The cultivators exclaimed in shock as they discussed fervently. His eyes were filled to the brim with this huge dragon. The young lady's lips curled into a sweet smile. She slowly stood up. Even though the green dragon had lowered its body low enough. But to humans, this was equivalent to the height of a 3-story building. Yiqing Luo opened her arms. Her red sleeves fluttered along with the strong wind, like a butterfly's wings spreading out. Her lips curled upwards, her ravishing face was like a stream of gold, peerlessly beautiful. Ashen, I'm back. She laughed lightly, her voice was filled with joy. Finishing her words, she leaped. There was no presence of profound energy on her body. Just like that, he allowed himself to fall down as light as a feather. Swoosh, a light breeze blew past. Her body fell into an embrace. The elegant sandalwood scent seeped into her nostrils. Her delicate body, which had been chilled by the astral wind, was blown away. Yiqing Luo's arms hooked around his neck, her eyes filled with smiles, her sweet voice softly called out to her lover, "Ah Xian." Done playing? Dmo Xian's eyes drooped, his deep peach blossom eyes seemed to be plated with light, as he gazed deeply at the young lady's face. Yiqing Luo buried her head into his chest, rubbing against it. The game is still going on, how can it be enough? She raised her head again, smiling at Dmo Xian. Ah Xian's body is a little cold, did he wait for me for an entire night? She knew. After she entered the forbidden grounds, Dmo Xian would absolutely not leave this place. He would be at the entrance waiting for her. The man looked at the girl in his arms and smiled sweetly. Suddenly he bent down and gave her a hard peck on her lips. Yiqing Luo hugged his neck tightly as she giggled. Since Ah Xian is so cooperative, I will reluctantly agree to let you play with me. She purposely dragged out the last word. Her long and narrow eyes curved into a sly arc. She glanced behind her in the direction of Fox Saint Technique and the other undead puppets. Fox Saint Fa's face turned pale, and his legs turned to jelly as he fell to the ground. He stared at the two people who were hugging each other in shock. You actually really? And Dizun? How could, her fear? It was not just because of the Azure Dragon. And the appearance of Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo came out alive from the forbidden grounds and even contracted. The Azure Dragon which the Palace Lord wanted. Fox Saint Fa already knew about this news last night. But he didn't expect Yiqing Luo could really control the head of the 4 sacred beasts, the Azure Dragon sacred beast. Furthermore, she brought the Azure Dragon out of the forbidden grounds. This was totally different from what the Palace Lord had guessed. She didn't expect, after Yiqing Luo entered the forbidden grounds, Dmo Xian would still be guarding outside the forbidden grounds. Which meant to say, earlier when she appeared with the undead puppets, Dmo Xian had actually been watching by the side. He didn't show his face and didn't take any action. Chapter 33-37. Fox Saint Law was shocked as she turned around and stared at the 2 new type of corpse puppets. The Overlord is here too, why didn't you say anything? The corpse puppets looked at her calmly. You are the one who brought people to set up the array, you are the second palace master of Secluded Palace, we are only responsible for following orders. Fox Saint Law's throat tightened. Her pair of pupils looked at the pair of fairy-like golden boy and jade girl in front of her in horror. Fear gnawed at her limbs and bones. I was still thinking. How to lure you out I didn't expect. You are so impatient, taking the opportunity when I am not around to attack the East Continent. Yiqing Luo wrapped one hand around Dmo Xian's waist, smiling sweetly as she looked at Fox Saint Law, the smile on her lips, gradually thickening. That's just nice, then let's settle all of you in one go and save me trouble later. While she was speaking, her fingertips had already raised the raging glower flame fan. The majestic pressure attacked downwards. Fox Saint Law's expression changed again. She could obviously feel it. Since the last time she crossed hands with Yiqing Luo's ability had become stronger again. And stronger not just by a little bit. Beads of cold sweat appeared on Fox Saint Law's forehead. Because Wolf Saint Law died to save her. All this was because of Yiqing Luo. She wanted to kill Yiqing Luo, to seek revenge for Wolf Saint Law. She begged the palace master to get an array. She wanted to trap Yiqing Luo in the forbidden grounds, forever unable to leave the forbidden grounds. But she had neglected. This piece of forbidden grounds was originally Azure Dragon's slumber. How could the array trap Yiqing Luo, who had a contract with Azure Dragon? Fox St. Law's face was ashen. Imperial Madam. Imperial Madam. Suddenly, not far away, East Wave Monarch, who had struggled free from Hao Nanren, rushed towards Yiqing Luo's direction. East Wave Monarch's face was filled with joy and pleading, "Imperial Madam, please save the East Continent. That bunch of monsters from Secluded Palace are about to invade the East Continent's territory." To East Wave Monarch, Yiqing Luo was the savior. Seeing Yiqing Luo coming out of the Forbidden Grounds, and in such a flashy manner, riding on a huge dragon, it was as though he had seen hope. Yiqing Luo was the hope of the East Continent. Yiqing Luo heard East Wave's monarch's voice and her vision fell onto him. "I will settle it." 4 simple words. It was as though the East Wave sovereign had been injected with limitless power. He bent his waist and bowed deeply towards Yiqing Luo's direction. When he lifted his waist again, he returned to his calm and majesty as the ruler of a country. Since he chose to believe in Yiqing Luo, he would no longer hesitate. What he needed to do was to settle all the factors which would disturb Yiqing Luo. Furthermore, he would try his best to complete the conditions which he had promised Yiqing Luo previously. The East Wave sovereign decisively called out to the 20 or so cultivators who were still alive. They quickly restrained the stunned man behind him. Hao Nanren's behavior today. This had already caused the hearts of the profounders from the various powers to turn cold. The sect master they respected was a sect master who was willing to maintain the peace of the continent, protect their territory and protect the people. Not because of his own selfish interests. Time and time again he had disregarded their lives. This battle, because of Yiqing Luo's return, blew the horn. When Yiqing Luo held onto the Secluded Palace's second palace lord, riding on the Azure Dragon, and appeared on the battlefield with Dmo Xian. Chapter 33-38. East Continent's commoners and various powerhouses had treated Yiqing Luo as a deity and respected her. Because Yiqing Luo brought along the Overlord to join in, Secluded Darkness Palace's aggressive attack and invasion was completely interrupted. Furthermore, they retreated step by step. The Overlord's power was needless to say. In order to let his woman enjoy herself, he basically wouldn't make a move. Although he didn't make a move, but he stood on the battlefield, his gaze was fixed on Yiqing Luo. That unique aura still gave Nether Palace a huge pressure. Looking at Yiqing Luo's side, a green dragon, a white tiger, a vermilion bird, plus 30 ferocious three-eyed heavenly beasts which no one had ever seen before. Adding on Yiqing Luo's explosive power, it was simply a massacre in a slaughterhouse. Apparently, Yiqing Luo was going to have this battle with Nether Palace. It was treated as a testing ground for her to continuously advance 3 grades. After the profound grade advancement, the biggest training was actual combat training. Only through actual combat could she discover her own shortcomings and use the profound energy in her body flexibly. Nether Palace was like a free experience points. How could Yiqing Luo miss it so easily? And this was a slaughterhouse's action. It also made those who knew that Yiqing Luo had a secret weapon to deal with that group of impenetrable monsters from the Palace of Darkness. Various large powerhouses cultivators kept on gathering around Yiqing Luo, hoping to obtain a secret weapon to protect their own powerhouses. After 2 days of battle, Nether Palace was forced to retreat out of East Continent's territory. This result, the entire East Wave continent was overjoyed. The commoners were shouting Yiqing Luo's name and Dmo Xian's name excitedly. But Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian stood on top of the city walls, looking at the direction of Nether Palace, which was forced to retreat. But the expression on her face was still not relaxed. The reason why this battle had turned into a slaughterhouse was partly because of her advancement and the fact that she had contracted the Azure Dragon. But this battle was a little too smooth. Yiqing Luo felt flustered instead. Some were happy while others were worried. Just like this, Hao Nanren, who was imprisoned in the dungeon of the royal family, heard the good news from the guards. All he had was resentment and unwillingness. If it wasn't for that slut Yiqing Luo, the person who saved the East Continent and was hailed as a hero would be him, Hao Nanren. These honors clearly belonged to him. It was Yiqing Luo, that scoundrel, who snatched away his honor. He, the sect master of the Jade Dome sect, was trapped in this dark place. Hao Nanren looked around with resentment in his eyes. He scoffed coldly. After he left, how proud that little slut was right now. When the time came, she would die miserably. East Wave Monarch was obviously bewitched by that slut Yiqing Luo. To imprison him here, Weren't they afraid that the citizens of the East Continent who admired the Jade Dome sect would join forces to protest? Compared to the royal family, his identity as the sect master of the Jade Dome sect was even more noble. The purpose of the Jade Dome sect's existence was to maintain the balance between the four continents in the Nirvana realm. If he disappeared for a few days, the elders of the Jade Dome sect would definitely sense that something was amiss. This investigation would definitely lead to the royal family. If things got out of hand, Jade Dome sect's elders appeared. He had enough confidence to make Yiqing Luo disappear from this world completely. Chapter 33-39. Suddenly, an ethereal and cold laughter sounded in Hao Nanren's mind. That laughter was full of ridicule. Hao Nanren's expression changed and he quickly looked around. Who is it? Who is it? His movements attracted the attention of the two guards guarding outside. The guard walked in and looked at Hao Nanren. He shouted angrily, "If you don't want to be whipped, behave yourself." After saying that, the two guards stood at the bars of the dungeon and continued to chat. "Stop looking, you can't see me." The voice rang out again. Hao Nanren's pupils constricted. He looked at the two guards who were leaning against the bars of the dungeon and chatting. Their expressions were the same as usual. Obviously they did not hear this sudden voice at all. Hao Nanren calmed himself down and walked to the corner of the dungeon warily. The dignified sect master of the Jade Dome sect has fallen to such a state. How pitiful! The cold voice seemed to be regretting something as it clicked its tongue and chuckled. Hao Nanren's face darkened and he asked angrily in his heart, "Who are you? What's your motive for looking for me?" The cold voice chuckled again. The illusory laughter seemed to come from all directions. "Do you think that the current you still has something that can be used by this empress?" The cold and gloomy voice mocked without holding back. Hao Nanren, who had always been conceited, could not tolerate someone looking down on him. "Since I have no value, why are you looking for me? I just feel that the sect master of the Jade Dome sect is a little ridiculous, so I couldn't help but laugh." The cold voice was full of sarcasm. Hao Nanren was furious and his eyes widened. "Get lost." Hao Nanren became more and more furious. That voice was like a demonic voice that kept ringing in Hao Nanren's mind. Bit by bit, it tortured Hao Nanren's psychological defense. Hao Nanren had a splitting headache from the laughter. He hugged his head tightly with both hands and finally gritted his teeth as if he had surrendered. "What exactly do you want?" His submission made the cold voice very satisfied. The cold voice did not continue laughing. Instead, it chuckled and said, "The sect leader of the Jade Dome sect is still dreaming that there will be an elder of the Jade Dome sect or an elder of the sect coming to save you. I really think that you are foolish and naive." Hao Nanren's expression froze. "What do you mean?" "Your families. The next successor of the Jade Dome sect that you hid has already been brought into the palace by the East Wave Sovereign." The cold voice chuckled in a low voice. It seemed to be mocking him, but it also seemed to be pitying him. Hao Nanren's body stiffened, and his eyes widened in shock. "The next successor is here, especially when he is controlled by the East Wave Monarch. Do you think that the elders of the Jade Dome sect who have long wanted to divide your forces will miss this opportunity?" The cold voice was still explaining the current situation to him in his mind. "So, are you still hoping that the elders of the sect will find out that you've been imprisoned and rush over to save you?" When the last word was uttered, Yi Zichen's expression changed. Hao Nanren clenched his fists. No, it couldn't be like this. He had clearly hidden that brat very well. How could he be taken away by the royal family? In his heart, he kept brainwashing himself not to believe the words of this mysterious person. However, there was a voice in his mind telling him. Chapter 33-40. In the end, Hao Nanren knelt down weakly. He hugged his head and asked softly, What should I do?" As the sect master of Jade Dome sect, even if Hao Nanren was narrow-minded, he was absolutely not a fool. He naturally knew. The appearance of this sinister voice was definitely not as simple as watching him make a fool out of himself. To be able to silently appear in the dungeon under such tight supervision, and to be able to converse with him without being detected by the guards. It showed how powerful the owner of this sinister voice was. This person would find him, which meant that he still had some value. And it also meant that this person had a common enemy with him. But Hao Nanren couldn't guess. Was this person's motive the East Billows royal family or Yiqing Luo? No matter which one it was, they were all his targets for revenge. "Do you want revenge?" The sinister voice laughed coldly. Hao Nanren clenched his fists. Yes. Not only did he want revenge, he also wanted to protect his Jade Dome sect. Jade Dome sect could only belong to him alone. No one else could even think of touching it. Even if it was his own son, he wouldn't be able to get his hands on it. I can help you to walk out of the dungeon, but the rest will depend on what you do. The sinister voice laughed. That's right, that son of yours is hidden very well by the royal family. If you want to find him, you have to put in some effort. How Nanren's eyes flashed as a vicious glint flashed past his eyes. He had to find the son who had the mark of the next sect master of Jade Dome sect. Otherwise, once that child had a chance to make a comeback, he would absolutely not let him off. If it wasn't for the child who had the God Emperor mark, once he died, Jade Dome sect would be affected. Otherwise he would have strangled the child to death the moment the God Emperor mark appeared. He was the sect master of Jade Dome sect. That child had seen him kill his mother with his own eyes. That child had always hated him. He was clearer than anyone else. So he absolutely had to find that child. What do you need me to do? Hao Nanren asked gloomily. The sinister voice laughed coldly. Do you think you have any value for me to make use of? I don't believe that you will help me unconditionally. Hao Nanren squinted his eyes and said coldly. The voice laughed again. Indeed, I won't help you unconditionally, but it's also true that you don't have anything that I can use. The voice paused, and the coldness in it sent a chill down Hao Nanren's spine. However, after all, an annoying fly is also a troublesome fellow to deal with. Hao Nanren hadn't thought about the meaning of this sentence. Suddenly he felt a sharp pain in his head and his vision turned pitch black. After that, he lost consciousness. East Wave Continent, Jade Dome City Imperial Palace. East Wave Monarch stood respectfully behind Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian, as his face was filled with reverence. Behind him, the representatives of countless forces also stood respectfully at the side. The East Wave Monarch said happily, "It's all thanks to the help of Emperor Madam and Dizun that the East Wave Continent is safe. On behalf of all the people of the East Wave Continent, I thank Emperor Madam and Dizun." The row of representatives behind him respectfully knelt down and expressed their gratitude in unison. Although Yiqing Luo had a bad premonition. But looking at the people of the East Wave Continent, they were all immersed in the joy of this victory. She didn't have any concrete evidence. Chapter 3341. Based on Seclusion Palace's character. After being beaten to the point of retreating out of East Continent's borders. But there was still no movement. They must be suppressing their evil intentions, waiting for the right time to unleash it. She absolutely could not let her guard down. Yiqing Luo leaned on Dmo Xian's arm as she smiled at the crowd behind her. Monarch and I are merely making a deal. You've completed my request and I'll settle Seclusion Palace for you. There's no need to thank me. No. Imperial Madam's request is for the sake of East Continent. After East Continent Monarch found the God Emperor's imprint, the future successor of Jade Dome sect, he completely understood why Yiqing Luo would raise such a request. Even for him who was in a high position. He couldn't understand. How could Hao Nanren be so heartless to hurt his own flesh and blood, the descendant who would take over his position as Jade Dome sect's sect master in the future? Just to protect his position as sect master? By right, shouldn't he be nurtured from a young age to protect Jade Dome sect in future? But Hao Nanren trapped the boy in the secret room and restrained him with iron chains. He used various humiliating methods to drive the boy crazy. If it wasn't for the fact that the boy was quick-witted and acted dumb, enduring the humiliation, probably now. He couldn't even keep his limbs and had become a cripple. Luckily he was able to save him in time. As long as the boy recuperated properly, he would definitely regain his health in time. This boy definitely had a grudge against Jade Dome sect and his own father. Imperial Madam asked him to bring the boy back to teach him personally. Then when the boy grew up, she would let him become Jade Dome sect's sect master openly. She hoped that East Continent royal family and Jade Dome sect would be on good terms. Because he had suffered too much since he was young. The boy would know how to be grateful. It's all in the past, let's not flatter each other anymore. Yiqing Luo waved her hand. She thought for a moment and decided to remind them, Seclusion Palace has always been sinister and cunning. They have lost this battle completely and will definitely find a chance to counterattack. It's better for everyone to be more alert during this period of time. East Continent Monarch heard the deeper meaning in Yiqing Luo's words and his expression congealed. Thank you Imperial Madam for your reminder. Yiqing Luo, East Wave Monarch and various powerhouses representatives exchanged some conventional greetings and instructed them to take note of some small matters. Just as he was speaking, Yiqing Luo's expression changed slightly as her originally smiling long and narrow eyes suddenly squinted. Imperial Madam, what's wrong? The East Wave Sovereign was always good at reading people's expressions. He immediately asked worriedly. The East Wave continent had already regained its peace. However, the East Wave Sovereign's heart was still in a mess. Yiqing Luo's emotions. It was highly possible that it was related to the lifeline of the East Wave continent. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes as her fingertips gently caressed the profound phoenix ring. Then he glanced sideways. His peripheral vision collided with DMO Xian's. Her prey had taken the bait. Yiqing Luo and DMO Xian looked at each other with a smile and immediately stood up. The two's actions stunned everyone present, including the East Wave Sovereign. The East Wave Sovereign came to his senses and stood up as well. My Lord Emperor, Madam Emperor, what's wrong? It's nothing. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes were deep, some small private matters that need to be settled. She held onto DMO Xian's hand and under everyone's startled gazes, they walked out of the palace. Chapter 3342. Right, Jade Dome Sect's young master, it's best that you bring him along and take care of him personally. As for the two people in the dungeon, I'll settle them. East Wave Monarch was a little dazed. He hadn't finished digesting the meaning of Yiqing Luo's words. Why did she suddenly mention the successor of Jade Dome Sect? And the two people in the dungeon? Could it be that something had happened to the two people in the dungeon? East Wave Monarch was an intelligent man. No matter how many questions he had, he wouldn't voice them out now. He kept replying to Yiqing Luo's instructions. Then he dismissed those powerhouse's cultivators. He rushed to the palace of the successor of the Jade Dome Sect. In the dungeon. When Yiqing Luo and DMO Xian appeared together, it caused a huge commotion. Yiqing Luo raised her hand to stop the guards' enthusiasm. The two of them walked quickly into the dungeon and walked towards Hao Nanren's cell door. The guards opened the chains attentively. If Overlord and Imperial Madam want to interrogate the prisoner, just let us bring him over. Why did you come over personally? Yiqing Luo didn't say a word as she walked straight into the dungeon. Her gaze fell onto the corner. A man dressed in a prisoner's uniform curled up on the ground, as though he was in deep sleep. The guard said attentively, Imperial Madam, don't worry. Jade Dome Sect's sect master fell here after a bout of madness and hasn't moved at all. Hasn't moved? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she walked towards the person in the corner and stepped on him. The person in the corner still didn't move at all. The guard heard the heaviness in Yiqing Luo's tone and his heart trembled. The two guards swiftly walked forward as they squatted down and pried open the person in the corner. When her messy and dirty hair was lifted, she looked at him, revealing Hao Nanren's plump face. The guards heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily, he was still around. They hurriedly smiled at Yiqing Luo and were about to speak. But when the young lady saw Hao Nanren's face, her expression turned even gloomier. Her long and narrow eyes seemed to be filled with raging waves. Imperial Madam, is something wrong? The guard was shocked by this powerful aura as he felt a chill down his spine. Yiqing Luo kicked her feet as her round body turned. Look carefully. The guards suppressed their fear and stared at Hao Nanren carefully. One of the guards suddenly turned pale. He's dead. Right, dead. The rotund man lying on the ground was no longer breathing. The guard was stunned as he raised his head in puzzlement and looked at Yiqing Luo. He hoped that Yiqing Luo could give him an answer. Why did he suddenly? The sect master of the Jade Dome Sect was dead. They had been guarding the entrance of the dungeon. How did the sect master of the Jade Dome Sect die? Madam, I really don't know what's going on. The guards were so shocked that they fell to their knees. Yiqing Luo shifted her feet away from that corpse. She looked at DMO Xian and curled her lips slightly. If we rush over now, will we be able to catch up to the most exciting part? Yes. DMO Xian gazed deeply into her eyes. Yiqing Luo held onto DMO Xian's arm and turned to look at the guards kneeling on the ground. You don't have to blame yourselves, this person is not Hao Nanren. Not sect leader Hao? The guards were stunned and stared at the corpse on the ground. This face, this figure, no matter how they looked, it looked like Hao Nanren. In this world, was there anyone who had the same figure as Hao Nanren? Chapter 3343. Before he could finish, Yiqing Luo interrupted, No need, Xian and I will settle it. Saying that, she and DMO Xian walked out of the dungeon. Hao Nanren wouldn't die. Neither she nor the Dark Shadow Palace would let Hao Nanren die. He's dead. As the sect master of one of the four great sects in the Nirvana realm, it would definitely attract the attention of the Heavenly Tao. Right now, the Nirvana realm was being targeted by the corpse puppets in the Dark Palace. The heavenly Tao was aware of the current situation in the Nirvana realm. He would definitely intervene in this matter. How could the Palace of Darkness allow such a thing to happen? And the reason why she couldn't let Hao Nanren die? It was because if Hao Nanren died because of her, no matter what the reason was, the death of the sect master would be blamed on her. At that time, a lot of troublesome things would come one after another. In any case, they had been fighting in the Nirvana realm for such a long time. There was no response from the upper realm and the heavenly axiom. Rather than relying on the heavenly Tao, it was better to rely on oneself. Therefore, she did something to Hao Nanren's body very quickly. It was also commonly known as recycling. While the East Billow Sovereign was imprisoning Hao Nanren in the dungeon, based on his experience fighting against the Palace of Darkness for such a long time, Yiqing Luo had long guessed that over at secluded Darkness Palace's side, they would definitely repeat the same old trick, starting from the enemies around her. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. The Dark Ghost Palace made use of this to their advantage. So Yiqing Luo might as well beat him at his own game. The Palace of Darkness wanted to use Hao Nanren's hatred to distract them and attract everyone's attention. Then she would use Hao Nanren as bait to lure out the people behind the Palace of Darkness. Although Yiqing Luo wasn't sure, the person who came to help Hao Nanren would be the person behind the scenes of the Dark Palace. But one thing was certain. This person definitely had an important position in the Dark Nether Palace. As long as he followed this clue and caught the person behind the scenes of the Dark Palace, he would be able to do so. All the future that the gloomy palace had imagined would be for naught. She had sealed most of Hao Nanren's meridians with needles. The current Hao Nanren probably couldn't even defeat a low-level profound practitioner. In addition, in Hao Nanren's body she placed a goo worm that Miao Yi had given her. According to the Mother Goo's reaction, Yiqing Luo was able to differentiate Hao Nanren's position very quickly. Everything was indeed as Yiqing Luo had planned. Following the Mother Goo's response, Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian quickly arrived at a place outside of East Continent's borders. This was a huge palace built of green bricks that seemed to have existed for a very long time. An extremely dense yin qi floated above the palace. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. This place, why does it look so strange? Why don't I remember there being such a palace at the border of the East Wave continent? In the past there really wasn't. Dmo Xian caressed her fine black hair. There was none in the past, but now there was? Who could build such a palace in such a short period of time? Moreover, this palace looked extremely old. How could he not see that it was a newly built palace? Hao Nanren is in the palace. Could it be that this palace is an illusion created by the Palace of Darkness? Yiqing Luo asked shamelessly. If it was really an illusion of the Dark Palace, then it would be a little tricky. An illusion of the palace had the owner's consciousness. If she and Dmo Xian were to get so close to each other. Chapter 3344. This would also expose their tracks. It's indeed an illusionary palace. Dmo Xian looked at the young lady's burning gaze as his thin lips curled into a smile. Does Lil Luo want to go in? Yiqing Luo held his palm as she smiled. Xian can bring me in, right? Dmo Xian would ask in this way. He must have thought of a way to enter the palace without getting hurt. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as his deep pupils gazed deeply at his wrist, at that fair and tender little hand. If Lil Luo wants to go in, I can bring you in. Yiqing Luo's smile had yet to widen. However, the man suddenly held her hand. His fingers tightened as his arm exerted strength. Her body was brought into Dmo Xian's arms. The scorching temperature infected Yiqing Luo. The man's husky magnetic voice was heard beside her ear. But, Lil Luo, what are you going to use to bribe me to bring you in? Yiqing Luo's cheeks turned hot as she widened her eyes and stared at Dmo Xian. But the moment she raised her head, she met with Dmo Xian's deep and watery peach blossom eyes. That brilliant and colorful light. It was so bright that it made her heart tighten uncontrollably as it palpitated faster. This man. He really didn't let go of any chance to flirt with her. Yiqing Luo's pink lips rose as her long and narrow eyes curled into a watery arc. She laughed softly as she cooperated with him and said what he wanted to hear. I'll use myself to bribe you, how about that? Dmo Xian's eyes were filled with smiles as his palm held the back of the young lady's head as he suddenly bent down and kissed her lips. It was just a very light kiss before he left her lips. Let's collect the interest first. He laughed lightly as he released the back of her head and held her little hand in his large palm. Let's go. Yiqing Luo regained her senses from the beauty. She actually stood in the palace. What the heck? Wasn't she just standing outside the palace? Why did she come in? Could it be earlier when Diamo Xian was kissing her? Brought her into the palace? Did he need to be so mysterious? Looking at the young lady's shocked face and staring at him with a helpless look, the expression on Diamo Xian's face turned warmer. The depths of his eyes were also tainted with a bit of doting and tenderness. Let's go find Hao Nanren. To be able to make such a big scene in the palace, I think that person must be the palace master of Gloomy Palace. Yi Qing Luo pulled Diamo Xian's arm and spread out the mother beast in her hands, following the mother beast's reaction, searching for Hao Nanren's direction. With the guidance of the mother beast, Yi Qing Luo quickly came to the room which Hao Nanren was in. However, she and Diamo Xian had just stepped into the room. Behind him, a sinister laugh sounded. As expected, you've come? That cold voice was accompanied by a creepy laughter. When Yi Qing Luo heard that, her expression changed slightly as she swiftly hugged Diamo Xian's arm and turned around. But behind her, other than Hao Nanren who was sitting on a wooden chair, there was no one else. The moment he saw Yi Qing Luo, Hao Nanren was also surprised. He slammed the table and stood up. You bitch. His eyes were scarlet red as he clenched his teeth, looking as though he was about to rush up and swallow Yi Qing Luo alive. Yi Qing Luo's vision looked around vigilantly as she squinted her eyes. Her perceptive ability couldn't detect the aura which was emitting that sneer. Chapter 3345. Diamo Xian held her hand and squeezed it. This action replaced his reply. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. Diamo Xian's meaning was... There was indeed a fourth person other than Hao Nanren. Yi Qing Luo's heart suddenly constricted. She had already advanced to Sky Profound 4th grade. She couldn't sense the presence of the fourth person. It showed how powerful that person was. You slut. How did you know that I'm here? Hao Nanren bellowed in exasperation. And what on earth did you do to me? Why is it that I have no way to utilize the profound energy in my profound jade heart? Are you the one who did it? Hao Nanren howled hysterically. It didn't even attract Diamo Xian and Yi Qing Luo's gazes onto him. This made Hao Nanren feel that Yi Qing Luo totally didn't put him in her eyes. In fact, Yi Qing Luo indeed didn't put him in her eyes. Yi Qing Luo's thoughts were all on that powerful and mysterious person who couldn't be seen. Slut. In this place, I'm not afraid of you at all. Hao Nanren was flustered as he rolled up his sleeves and pounced towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. He hadn't finished his furious howl. Diamo Xian raised his hand slightly. A burst of majestic profound energy sent Hao Nanren flying out. Yi Qing Luo half squinted her eyes as she slightly raised her head, as her lips curled into a faint cold smile. Since we will enter the palace, it is within your expectations. Now that this is your territory, do you still not dare to show your true face? She intentionally suppressed her voice to be extremely calm. Her words were filled with provocation towards that mysterious and powerful person. When Diamo Xian indicated that there was indeed a fourth person in this room, Yi Qing Luo knew that she and Diamo Xian had fallen into a trap. That person in the dark had long known that they would come to the palace. Or rather, just as she intended to make use of Hao Nanren to beat him at his own game, to use him as bait to attract the mastermind of Secluded Palace, the person in the dark also beat them at their own game, using Hao Nanren as the bait to lure them. Whereas she and Diamo Xian had changed from the hunter to the prey. That person lured her and Diamo Xian into this palace. Definitely, he already had a way to deal with her and Diamo Xian. The current situation. It was unrealistic for them to leave this palace. He might as well take the initiative to attack. First, he had to figure out who this mysterious and powerful person was. Hearing Yi Qing Luo's words, Hao Nanren's angry face froze. Little bitch, what do you mean by that? What do you mean that it was within expectations that you would find me? Finally, Yi Qing Luo shifted her gaze onto Hao Nanren. The smile in her eyes was tinged with sympathy and pity. You actually don't know. But that's true. With the intelligence of the Jade Dome sect leader, even if he was sold, he would still happily count the money for the other party. What did you say? Hao Nanren's expression darkened. Isn't that simple? You are nothing more than bait that he used to lure me out. Yi Qing Luo's lips twitched in ridicule. Don't tell me you really think that Secluded Palace's people will save a useless trash like you? Little bitch. Don't even think of instigating this sect leader. Hao Nanren clenched his fists tightly. Ha 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 ha. That sinister laughter rang once again. Chapter 3346. That person was extremely tall and dressed in a black robe. It was the standard equipment of the mysterious person. With his face covered, it was impossible to see the person's face clearly. Especially, the dense black aura that shrouded his entire body was like a spider web, densely spreading out like a huge bloody mouth, causing one's scalp to go numb and fear to rise in their hearts. What shocked Yiqing Luo the most was, even if this person appeared in front of her, she still couldn't sense the aura of the person in front of her. Yiqing Luo's expression congealed slightly, as her slender fair fingers subconsciously held Diamo Xian's hand tightly. The man stretched out his arm and pulled her into his embrace. The warm scent of sandalwood permeated her entire body. Diamo Xian gently circled the young lady's petite body, as if the other party had scared the person in his heart. His pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes instantly shot out coldness, like frost cutting through bones. He looked at that person, Palace Master, of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows? The man chuckled. His cold voice, which had been deliberately altered, sounded a little creepy. Your Majesty, I trust you have been well since we last met. This was also tacitly agreeing to Diamo Xian's question. Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace? As expected, the Palace Master of the secluded palace had come personally? Yiqing Luo narrowed her long and narrow eyes as she sized that person up. You? What's your motive for luring us to the palace that you've created? Weren't you the one who used this trash as bait to lure this empress into taking the bait? The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace chuckled. Her sharp voice was strangely hoarse. As you wish, I have appeared in front of you. What, don't you feel happy? Hao Nanren, who was labeled as trash, was speechless. Even now he still did not know what exactly had happened. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips. If everything went according to her plan, she would be the hunter, using Hao Nanren as the bait to lure out the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace. Of course she was happy. But now, the situation was obviously different. She fell into someone's trap and became the other party's prey. Could she be happy? Who knew what kind of trap was laid in this palace, waiting for her and Diamo Xian to jump into the pit? The other party obviously knew that Diamo Xian was by her side. Furthermore, she had used Hao Nanren as bait and Diamo Xian would definitely be by her side. He even dared to play such a trick. Obviously he had no fear towards Diamo Xian. Towards the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace, Yiqing Luo was more or less clear about him. According to Jun Qingwu and Diamo Xian's previous investigations, the person behind the gloomy palace must be someone with an extremely high status in the upper realm. And Diamo Xian was also from the upper realm. The Palace Lord of Netherworld Palace wasn't afraid of Diamo Xian's words. Either that, the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace already had a surefire plan to deal with Diamo Xian. Or the Palace Lord of the Netherworld Palace and Diamo Xian's status were on par. Therefore he wasn't afraid of facing him. This thought made Yiqing Luo's expression suddenly dimmed. Little Luo, The man beside her gently called her name. His deep and mellow voice was like a clear spring, instantly calming her heart. Yiqing Luo raised her head and looked at him. Mo Yao's peach blossom eyes glowed faintly. I'm here, don't worry. Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled up as she gave a sweet smile. Amen, I believe you. With Ah Xian by her side, all her uneasiness, under his gentleness and calming presence, disappeared. She hugged the man's firm waist tightly. Chapter 3347. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as her vision swiftly followed the direction of that aura. Coincidentally, it met with the Palace Lord's eyes. That's right. It was his eyes. That black cloak was shrouded in, making one unable to see his real eyes. It was like a black whirlpool, constantly surging violently. His sharp gaze was burning. That gaze was indeed scorching. What was going on? Why did the Palace Lord reveal such a gaze to her? Just like, what evil deeds had she done to let him down? But the Palace Lord didn't give her a chance to think deeply. The Palace Lord's eyes were once again shrouded in the cloak. Miss E. The Palace Mistress of Ethereal Palace deliberated over Yiqing Luo's form of address as she gave a low chuckle. I heard that Miss Yi is exceptionally intelligent. This palace would like to hear. Miss Yi, what is this palace's motive? Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased even tighter. The Palace Lord continued to smile. If you guessed correctly, I will let you leave, how about that? The Lord of Abyss Palace's vision was fixed on Yiqing Luo. This gaze made Yiqing Luo feel uncomfortable all over. This Palace Lord? What on earth did he want to do? What? Did she feel that his gaze had a Strange feeling. Like familiarity. Like resentment. Or like... He was extremely displeased with her actions. All sorts of complicated emotions made Yiqing Luo slightly puzzled. Why did she feel that the palace lord seemed to know her? No. Impossible. If she knew this kind of person so powerful that he was standing in front of her. If she couldn't sense such a powerful figure. It was impossible that she didn't know him. Her waist was suddenly held by a strong and powerful arm. The man pulled her behind him. His tall and straight body blocked in front of her. And also blocked the palace lord's vision. Diamo Xian's dark peach blossom eyes seemed to flash with biting cold as he looked coldly at the palace lord. If I want to bring my wife away, do you think you can stop me? Their gazes collided. The surrounding air seemed to have condensed. Yiqing Luo could even feel that in the air, there was a shapeless qi wave, constantly surging, revealing a strong murderous aura. Lord Dizun is really confident in himself. The palace master of the secluded palace sneered and suddenly raised his right arm. Yiqing Luo's expression changed. Ah Xian? Diamo Xian's arms tightened and a transparent barrier blocked in front of the both of them. In the surroundings, the luxurious palace slowly turned into a black aura, gradually distorting and dissipating. Gradually, it turned into an abyss that resembled hell. The black aura was twisting bit by bit. It formed another scene. Weeds grew everywhere, and the air was filled with the smell of plants that had been corroded, giving off a gloomy and horrifying feeling. At this moment, a powerful air wave turned into a hurricane and collided with Diamo Xian's barrier. Yiqing Luo was in Protector Emo Xian's arms as she opened her eyes and surveyed the surroundings. It was a desolate graveyard. It was impossible to tell how old this tomb was. The oppressive atmosphere made it difficult for people to breathe. Hao Nanren, who was sitting on the chair, saw this scene and was so scared that his legs turned into jelly. Where is this? Didn't you say that you will help me take revenge? Why? Hao Nanren was listening to the conversation between Yiqing Luo and the palace lord of the secluded palace. He more or less understood some of the words. Chapter 3348. The palace lord's sinister voice sounded as he laughed softly. His laughter was ethereal, making one's scalp go numb. I didn't say I'd help you. With a flick of his palm, Hao Nanren's fat body flew backward and landed heavily on the ground. This graveyard was a little scary. The ground was filled with broken limbs and countless bones. Hao Nanren's fall had broken bones all around. The sharp bones pierced directly into Hao Nanren's body. It was so painful that Hao Nanren's features twisted as he screamed miserably. If it wasn't for the fact that under such a situation if you died it would be very difficult. I really don't want to keep you alive. The palace lord's tone was filled with impatience. Finishing his words, he placed his vision on Yiqing Luo. Miss Yi, I'll give you one last chance. Are you going to guess or not? That tone seemed as though he was teasing his prey. It made Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased into a bundle. The palace lord's motive? Even if she knew, she didn't want to answer. Diamo Xian's thoughts were the same as hers. The moment the palace master of secluded darkness palace finished speaking, Diamo Xian had already held onto the young lady's waist tightly as he leapt up. His purple robe fluttered as the patterns on it seemed to be sparkling brightly. The icy cold profound ray was sharp and valiant as it headed straight towards the palace lord's face. His eyes were sealed in ice for thousands of miles. His entire body was emitting a strong flame which contained a shocking murderous intent. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo hugged Diamo Xian's waist tightly as she was stunned by the flame emitted from him. This Diamo Xian. As compared to the past times. It made one's heart tremble. This was the first time she saw it. Diamo Xian's arm hugged her tightly as his deep voice was still as gentle as usual. It's all right, close your eyes and it will end very soon. Only this gentleness made Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly felt a tightness. She pursed her lips as she grabbed Diamo Xian's arm tightly. Wait a minute, Ah Xian. You want to kill him? Diamo Xian's eyes drooped as his deep peach blossom eyes stared deeply at her face. You don't wish for me to kill him? That tone seemed to be a little grumbling. Yiqing Luo? Surely he wasn't jealous again? It's not that I don't want you to kill him, it's just that. I find it a little strange. Yiqing Luo shook her head, knitted her brows and hesitated. The palace lord of the secluded darkness palace used a trap within a trap to lure us here, so it's impossible that he didn't take any precautions. I know Ah Xian, you're very strong, but the other party is also from the upper realm. I'm worried that he might have some conspiracy against you. Heh. Behind him, the sneer of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace could be heard. Apparently he had heard Yi Qing Luo's words. Miss Yi is indeed smart. Indeed, I couldn't have lured you all here so simply, Yi Qing Tang said. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace's voice was cold and sinister. Even though he was covered in a black cloak, Yi Qing Luo could feel that under that cloak, there was an eerie and sinister aura. Unfortunately, I discovered it too late. The palace lord of Netherworld Palace sneered in disdain as his cold eyes looked at Diamo Xian, who had stopped his attack because of the young lady's obstruction. So what if they found out? Ever since Diamo Xian made his move, Diamo Xian had already fallen into his trap. The palace lord of the Netherworld Palace's words made Yi Qing Luo's expression congealed as her heart thumped. What did he mean by this? The next moment, the palace lord of the Netherworld Palace gave her the answer. She saw the palace lord of the Netherworld Palace giving a cold laugh as he waved his black robe, following the movement of a burst of black qi. Ka. Chapter 3349. This voice made Yi Qing Luo stun slightly. She swiftly turned her head around and looked behind her. She saw the black qi curling up in the tomb behind her. Unknowingly a huge crack had appeared. Ah Xian. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted and her heart sank as she hugged Diamo Xian's waist tightly. Her fingertips moved and the glower flame fan opened up, sweeping away the billowing flames. Don't make a move, there's a problem. Diamo Xian's large palm pressed onto Yi Qing Luo's hand, and also suppressed the raging flames on the glower flame fan. What is this? Yi Qing Luo looked at the huge crack behind her. The entire tomb under this black qi looked even more sinister and eerie. Diamo Xian's expression was cold, his frozen peach blossom eyes stared at the palace lord of secluded darkness palace as his thin lips pursed slightly. I'm fine. However, from his tone and expression, it was clear that it didn't seem like he was fine. This was the first time Yi Qing Luo met with a high-ranked profound grade like Diamo Xian in a battlefield. Other than being able to sense the surrounding atmosphere, there was something strange. She was totally unable to sense where the danger was coming from like in the past. Diamo Xian had apparently guessed that the palace lord of secluded darkness palace had set up a trap here. He didn't say. It meant that this trap to him was a little tricky. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips as she clutched Diamo Xian's sleeve tightly. At this moment she hated herself. Her improvement was still too slow. She kept saying that she wanted to walk side by side with Diamo Xian, but after such a long time, she was still unable to get close to Diamo Xian's height. All along, it was Diamo Xian who stood in front of her unconditionally, protecting her, helping her to sweep away everything. But now, she couldn't even help Diamo Xian with a little bit of help. There was a high possibility that she was a burden. Even though Diamo Xian's attention was focused on the palace lord of secluded darkness palace. But the young lady's depressed mood was still clearly felt by him, and he could clearly see through the young lady's thoughts. He lowered his eyes and caressed the young lady's head as he spoke warmly. You're already great and you're not a burden. As long as you're by my side, that's enough. His warm words of love were like a hot spring, soaking into Yi Qing Luo's heart. Her eyelashes fluttered, and her arms tightened around him. You're still talking about love when you're at death's door. I'd like to see how deep your love is. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace's sharp voice seemed to contain a trace of anger. As soon as he finished speaking, under the black robe a hand was raised. His hands were long and slender and they were very beautiful. It was obvious that it was the hand of a young man. A whirlpool of black airflow started to revolve round after round from his palm, heading straight towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo instantly felt a huge suction force, sucking her body towards the direction of that whirlpool. Little Luo, Diamo Xian immediately hugged her slender waist tightly. But just at this moment, that huge crack behind him suddenly stretched out a few arms which were formed from the black qi, and tightly wrapped around Diamo Xian. That twisting strength seemed as though it wanted to embed itself deeply into Diamo Xian's flesh. Whereas Yi Qing Luo's body was still being sucked towards the direction of the palace lord of seclusion palace. The man's strength around her waist became tighter and tighter. Yi Qing Luo felt that her waist was going to be chopped off directly. Chapter 3350. Yi Qing Luo felt the hand on her waist stiffen. Following that, she heard that sinister laughter continuing. This palace doesn't know how to have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. Such a beautiful little beauty if she were to be split into two. I wonder if she can still maintain her beauty. Yiqing Luo understood the meaning in his words as she endured the tearing suction force and stretched out both hands with difficulty, grabbing tightly onto Diamo Xian's arm. Ah Xian, don't listen. The hand on her waist slowly loosened. Yiqing Luo frantically tried to grab his arm. But Diamo Xian avoided it. Ah Xian. Losing the support of Diamo Xian's energy, Yiqing Luo's body speedily flew towards the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace. A dong sound was heard. Her petite body crashed into the arms of the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace. She didn't have time to struggle. The Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace had already locked her body tightly. Yiqing Luo couldn't struggle as she immediately raised her head and looked at Diamo Xian. She met with Diamo Xian's deep peach blossom eyes. Those black chi arms which were wrapped around him had almost entered his body, and it was continuously pulling him towards the direction of the crack. This scene made Yiqing Luo's pupils dilate as an unknown emotion started to surge in her heart. Wait for me. She only had time to see the man's thin lips moving slightly as he spat out two silent words. Following that, she saw his figure completely being sucked into the crack. The entire graveyard fell into silence. However, that man who had been protecting her, but was afraid of hurting her, had already disappeared in front of her eyes. Ah Xian. She stretched out her hand towards Diamo Xian's direction as her eyes were blood red. But in the end, she could only watch as he disappeared without a trace. Seclusion Palace. Yiqing Luo's blood-red pupils were like a demonic datura flower blooming, flashing a strange treacherous look. She was locked in the arms of the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace. With a backhand she grabbed the Palace Lord's collar tightly. A pair of blood-red eyes stared deadly at him. Where did you send Ah Xian to? What do you want to do to Ah Xian? Aren't you scheming against us? Why don't you send me over too? The palace master of the gloomy palace, who was being grabbed by the collar, was calm. The hand that was on her waist was still not letting go. He just looked at her quietly and quietly. He didn't answer Yiqing Luo's question. No matter how Yiqing Luo howled hysterically. He didn't seem to hear anything. Only uses under that black cloak cannot see the eye stares at her. After Yiqing Luo vented her frustrations, he didn't get a response. Gradually he calmed down. Only then did she realize that she was very close to the palace master of the Netherworld Palace. She was so close that she could smell the cold air of the palace master of Secluded Darkness Palace. The eyes under the black cloak gave her goosebumps. Those who didn't know better might think that the palace master of Secluded Darkness Palace was secretly in love with her. He wanted to take advantage of her and admire her beauty. For some reason, at this moment Yiqing Luo seemed to have seen a trace of familiarity from the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace. However, she couldn't remember when she had interacted with the palace head of the Secluded Darkness Palace. Miss Yi. The palace master of Gloomy Palace, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly called her name. Yiqing Luo's expression turned cold as she loosened her grip on his collar. What motive do you have? If your target is me and Ah Xian, then wouldn't it be better to send me over to Ah Xian? Ha ha ha. Chapter 3351. Who said my target is you and the Overlord? The minute the Palace Lord said that, Yiqing Luo's expression turned cold. Her brows creased as her eyes were filled with doubt. The Palace Lord suddenly increased the strength in his arms, pulling the young lady's petite body closer into his arms. Looks like Miss Yi is unable to guess my intention. In this way you are destined to stay by my side. The unfamiliar male breath made Yiqing Luo's expression turned extremely ugly. She struggled to break free from the Palace Lord's restraint. Her face was filled with disgust. Don't say it as though you have some improper thoughts towards me. Aren't you afraid of losing your Palace Lord's face by saying it so ambiguously? The Palace Lord didn't continue to hug her, allowing her to break free. After hearing the disgusting words from the young lady, the pair of eyes under the black cloak started to show traces of chilliness. However, the corners of his lips curled upwards. Then word by word she clearly spat out a sentence. What if I really am? What was it? Did he have improper thoughts towards her? Pui pui. Yiqing Luo was the first to spit on his face. This cold joke, it's not funny at all. Yiqing Luo rubbed her arms as she distanced herself from him. Don't say that your Palace Lord is against me, chasing after me time after time, scheming and scheming, it's all to attract my attention. Palace Lord, you're after all a high-leveled cultivator from the upper realm, isn't it a little inappropriate to tease a married woman like this? Yiqing Luo's obvious disgusted action made the Palace Lord's pupils shrink slightly. The hands under the black robe, clenched into fists, tightened a little. A married woman? He gave a low laugh disdainfully. You and him don't seem to be married. Sooner or later. Yi Qingluo replied decisively. So, where on earth did you send Xian to? The palace master of the Netherworld Palace lowered her head. The slender figure shrouded in the black cloak revealed a sense of loneliness and desolation. Yi Qingluo didn't know why from him she could see this kind of emotion. But this had nothing to do with her. She and the palace lord were originally enemies. The path they chose was different. The final outcome was bound to be a battle to the death. Suddenly the palace master of the Netherworld Palace stumbled on the spot. He raised his hand under the black robe and pressed it against his head. Yi Qingluo creased her brows as she stared at his actions. However, he was secretly speculating in his heart. What kind of tricks was he playing now? In just a few breaths, the palace master of the Netherworld Palace's hand on his head slowly fell down. When he raised his head again, he looked at her. The aura on his body clearly revealed a bit of coldness. He was no longer flirting with her just now. Swish, there was a slight noise. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace suddenly approached. Against the backdrop of the graveyard, his entire body was shrouded in black gas, like a sharp blade baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, tearing open its bloody mouth. His black robe fluttered in the wind. The eyes under the cloak seemed to be dipped in poison, piercingly cold and bone-piercing. In the blink of an eye, his hand was already around her neck. The force was so great that it imprisoned her, making it difficult for her to breathe. This palace's target, right from the start, was only you. His sinister voice sounded a little misty beside her ear. The biting cold intent dispersed in the air. Circles and punches of profound waves imprisoned Yi Qingluo's four limbs. Chapter 3352. The secluded palace's target was her. She had always been very clear about this point. She had always been unable to understand why someone from the upper realm, risking the danger of being detected by the heavenly way, ran to the lower realm to build a secluded palace. And then time and time again targeted her. What was the reason for it? To the people from the upper realm. No matter how powerful her innate talent and ability was, she was merely a cultivator from the lower realm. Why was it worth the palace lord of the secluded palace to spend so much effort to deal with her? Miss Yi, you don't have to worry. What I need is your body. As long as you listen to me, I can guarantee that your life will not be in any danger. The palace lord of the secluded palace inched closer to her as he smiled lightly. The strength in his fingers gradually tightened along with his smile. Yi Qingluo's face turned pale and gradually turned green. But she didn't stretch out her hand to pry the hand on her neck away. Nor did she struggle or beg for mercy. A pair of icy cold eyes, suffused with a seductive shade of blood, stared deadly at him. Tisk, looks like Miss Yi has already realized that I cannot kill you. The palace lord of the secluded palace released his fingers after meeting her gaze for several breaths. Yi Qingluo took a step back. Circles of red light appeared on her jade-white neck. She raised her hand and placed it on her neck. A pair of blood-colored eyes stared vigilantly at the palace lord of the secluded palace. Indeed, she could feel it. Although the palace lord of the secluded palace didn't show any mercy, it was indeed a stance to strangle her to death. But Yi Qingluo knew. The palace lord of the secluded palace would absolutely not let her die like this. Just like what he said earlier. What the palace lord of the secluded palace wanted was this body of hers. This sentence, Yi Qingluo didn't think that there was any other deeper meaning. But it was a serious meaning. The palace lord of the secluded palace wanted this body of hers to achieve a certain goal. Thinking carefully, it seemed that the palace lord of the secluded palace had repeatedly targeted her, was indeed to control her, to make her listen to them. Not only the palace lord of the secluded palace. Even the dark forces in the past were the same. Suddenly, Yi Qingluo seemed to have thought of something as her eyelashes fluttered. She abruptly raised her head and looked closely at the palace lord of secluded darkness palace. You all want my profound heart jade. After she finished speaking, the light in her eyes suddenly brightened again. No, that's not right. It's not only the profound heart jade, there are also other things. Everything that had happened in the past replayed in his mind like a slow-motion movie. Previously, the Dark King of the Dark Forces tried every possible way to snatch away the profound heart jade in my body. After that, the dark forces were taken away by your secluded darkness palace. You must have already known that my profound heart jade isn't simple. What you want is my profound heart jade, and this vessel that can hold the divine phoenix profound heart jade. You even joined forces with Godless Island? Previously you sent Wu Sansha to snatch the profound phoenix ring. I'm afraid your goal is the same as the dark organizations. That's why the remnants of the dark organization are willing to be your lackeys. That's right, their goal was the same. It was all for the so-called tomb of the Divine Emperor. It was all for the so-called Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. To find the tomb of the Divine Emperor, awaken the Emperor of the Divine Emperor, and obtain the Divine Phoenix's inheritance. This was the original motive of the Dark Forces. The motive of the Palace Lord of the Secluded Darkness should be the same. Chapter 3353. The Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace listened to her quietly. Indistinctly, his eyes under the cloak were tinged with a smiling intent. In fact, he was indeed smiling. His smile was light and filled with ridicule. Miss Yi is indeed, as the rumors say, intelligent beyond others. The underlying meaning was that everything that Yiqing Luo said. Indeed, it was true. But, unfortunately, it's too late to guess it now. I have no intention to let you leave. The Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace's laughter was filled with deep meaning. Come, continue speaking. I really want to know how much you have guessed. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk slightly. From the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace's reaction, she had guessed those things. That was about right. Her expression was calm. In actual fact, her inner heart was in turmoil. The little hand which was pressing on her chest unconsciously curled up. She looked at the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace and slightly raised her head as she pursed her lips. There's actually no problem with this heart-calming pearl in my body. And indeed it's for my own good, right? Feng Ling thought that this heart-calming pearl was intentionally tampered with by the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace to harm her. But in actual fact, the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace had intentionally made use of Feng Ling to pass the heart-calming pearl into her hands. No matter if it was Ghost Doctor or DMO Xian, they were unable to detect any ill intentions from the heart-calming pearl. Because there was no problem with the heart-calming pearl itself. The reason was, her body was the vessel which contained the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. If she was swallowed by the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. In this world, there was probably no other vessel which could contain the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. In case anything happened to the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. That was why the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace intentionally made Feng Ling send the heart-calming pearl to her side. It was to stabilize the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. But there seems to be one point: you and the Dark Forces are different. Yiqing Luo spoke again. The Dark Forces want my Profound Heart Jade to locate the vast Water God relic and open the God Emperor's tomb. But your Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace wants my Profound Heart Jade, it seems, not only to open the God Emperor's tomb? The Palace Master of the Secluded Palace smiled. Then what do you think I'm doing this for? This represented that Yiqing Luo's deduction was correct once again. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk a few more degrees. You want to obtain the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade, borrow this body of mine, and seize the Profound Heart Jade at the most appropriate and suitable time. Ah, haha. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace couldn't help but laugh out loud. He laughed heartily. Indeed smart. Haha, what you said is correct. The Palace Master of Dark Shadow Palace admitted very decisively, but you guessed one thing wrong. What Dark Shadow Palace wants is not only your Profound Heart Jade, they also want you as a person. Yiqing Luo's eyes were half narrowed, but she didn't open her mouth to ask further, quietly waiting for him to continue. Sure enough, the Palace Master of the Secluded Palace didn't keep him in suspense. He smiled and said, do you really think you're just a lowly mortal from a lowly world? To be able to possess the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade that even the three realms of heaven, earth, and divine want to obtain, is he really just an ordinary person? No. Yiqing Luo, you are not ordinary. Not only is he extraordinary, but he is also a genius that even the people of the upper realm are jealous of. Chapter 3354. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. Deep in her blood-colored eyes, there was a ripple of light. But her expression was still calm and indifferent. Slowly, she squinted her long and narrow eyes, her pink lips curled into a faint smile. I also feel that my identity is extraordinary. From the moment she found out that she wasn't Yi family's seventh Miss, Yi Tianquang's biological daughter, she knew that her background wasn't ordinary. After all, how could an ordinary person's body bear the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade which many cultivators coveted? Plus, The profound flame Dubhe map which her mother left behind before she died. That map was mysterious and complicated. Even when Dmo Shen came to the upper realm, one of his goals was the profound flame Dubhe map. That showed how mysterious the Dubhe map was. That time when the Baiming clan died to save Yi Fengru. The one which was left behind had something about her biological father. That box. A box which hid a powerful force. She didn't even dare to open the box. It was enough to show that her parents were extraordinary. She was the daughter of extraordinary parents. How could she be ordinary? But she didn't expect that the secluded palace not only wanted her divine phoenix profound heart jade, but also wanted to corrode her body, to turn her body into a puppet. The glint in Yi Qingluo's eyes flashed brightly. She crossed her arms and looked at the palace lord of secluded palace calmly. Looks like you seem to know my identity. Why don't you tell me how arrogant is my identity? The palace lord of secluded palace thought that after he said that, Yi Qingluo would be shocked, would resist and would go crazy. After all, no one was willing to become a puppet. A puppet which would be used by others in the future. But he didn't expect Yi Qingluo's reaction to be so calm. So calm that she didn't believe that he had the ability to make her his puppet. Listening to Yi Qingluo's casual question, the eyes of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace darkened. There was a hint of mysteriousness in his tone. So what if I know your identity? Don't tell me, you think you still have a chance to go to the upper realm and restore your identity? Yi Qingluo smiled. To put it bluntly, you don't know anything about my identity. The palace lord of secluded palace choked and his body stiffened, not saying a word. Yi Qingluo smiled again. There was a hint of malice in her eyes. She narrowed her eyes and looked at him with interest. Word by word she said something that shocked him again. Palace master of the Dark Abyss Palace? No, more accurately, I should call you, the palace master of the Dark Abyss Palace on the surface. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace shuddered. What do you mean? You're not the palace master of the Netherworld Palace. Yi Qingluo's smile remained unchanged as her tone was firm. No, I can't say that you're not, I can only say, you're just the palace mistress that was pushed out on the surface, and there's someone else behind the scenes. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace was silent for a long while before she said, I have concealed it very well. How did you see through it? His voice was still a little hoarse. Yi Qingluo smiled, imposing manner and the feeling between words. Do you think that I'm not strong enough to be the palace master of the secluded palace? He laughed in anger. Yi Qingluo raised her brows. You're very strong and imposing. But you're not the real palace master of the Netherworld Palace. Palace master of the Netherworld Palace. Since his imposing manner was very strong, then which part had gone wrong? He had forgotten to tell his babies that Master Mo had taken part in a QQ reading activity. From tomorrow onwards, which was on the 4/1, he needed his babies to leave a message in the book comments section and interact with Master Mo. Master Mo would reply to all of them. Master Mo's post in the book comments section, hoping for your likes and replies, and for the QQ reading activity, Great God said, Master Mo would adjust it to 10 book currency per question. The mission requirement was to raise a total of 20. Great God said that his babies could come forward to ask questions. Chapter 3355. You are the palace master of the Palace of Darkness, but the person who truly wants me is definitely not you. Yi Qingluo continued to smile. I've crossed hands with the Palace of Darkness for such a long time, so I'm considered to have some understanding towards them. If you hadn't answered my previous speculations, I probably wouldn't have thought in this direction. Because the person who truly wants this body of mine, the person who wants the divine phoenix profound heart jade, will not answer my questions, nor will he tell me more. Because that person knew very well that if he said too much, it would make me suspicious. Once I became suspicious, your goal and plan would very likely fail. She chuckled, and a chill spread from the depths of her charming eyes. I don't think that you went through so much trouble to separate Xian from me just to discuss things about me with me. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace was silent for a long time. The eyes under the black cloak were also filled with ice. He smiled as well. As expected of Miss Yi, no wonder the dark forces were defeated by you. The elite troops of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows couldn't do anything to you. He slowly stepped forward. He walked towards Yi Qingluo. The yin qi in the graveyard was chilling. As he walked, the black gas shrouding his body floated. It made him seem even more treacherous and terrifying. Yi Qingluo did not hide. Until he walked in front of her. Yiqing Luo then slowly raised her head and met his gaze. His face was calm and his eyes were as calm as still water. He stretched out his hand wanting to touch Yiqing Luo's face. The girl, who had been standing still all this time, turned her head slightly. "You can talk but don't touch me. I'm a married woman." She did not know which of her words had struck him. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace's fingers suddenly exerted force and forcibly grabbed her chin. Under the cloak, one could vaguely feel his ruthless gaze. "Yiqing Luo, I admit that you're very smart, but you've probably forgotten that even if there's someone behind me, I am indeed the mistress of secluded Darkness Palace." He closed in. Through the cloak. His breath splashed onto Yiqing Luo's face. The unfamiliar male scent made Yiqing Luo's slender brows crease tightly. She took a step back in discomfort. Her chin was tightly gripped by his hand. "In the end, you still belong to me." His hoarse and shrill voice carried a hint of madness. Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly trembled. Why did these words sound a little weird? Could the palace master of the secluded Darkness Palace really be interested in her? She raised her hand, trying to pry his hand away. However, he suddenly withdrew his hand and even his body took a few steps back. He pulled a distance away from Yiqing Luo. That hand which was originally pinching Yiqing Luo's chin was pressed tightly on her head. "What I mean is that you belong to me, as my vessel." His voice was somewhat breathless, as if he was suppressing something. She looked at his state. Yiqing Luo smiled bluntly. She raised her lips and smiled wickedly. "Looks like you're just being controlled by others." Once his actions went beyond what a palace master of the secluded Darkness Palace should do. The real mastermind behind the scenes. The forbidden curse on him would be able to restrain his actions in time. Chapter 3356. The Palace Master of Netherworld Palace. Although she couldn't see his expression, but Yiqing Luo sensed his gaze from him. All of them revealed the same message. "Are you a little stupid? Was there such a person who would steal someone else's corner so openly?" How much confidence did she have that she could pry him away? Yiqing Luo smiled. She didn't really want the palace master of secluded Darkness Palace to betray them. He knew so much about the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. Her identity was the palace master of the Dark Palace on the surface. How could he bear to leave the Palace of Darkness? Moreover, she had no way of knowing the relationship between the palace master of Darkness Palace on the surface and the person behind Darkness Palace. They did not expect him to betray them at all. His words were just a test. He wanted to test if the real mastermind was here. However, from the performance of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace, that person, he shouldn't be here. Although the person in front of him wasn't the real palace master of the secluded Darkness Palace. However, his strength was also above hers. He should be someone from the upper realm. She might not even be able to handle him, not to mention the person behind the scenes. He knew that the real mastermind was not here. Yiqing Luo could rest assured and find a breakthrough point for him to get DMO Xian back. Or send her to DMO Xian. Yiqing Luo believed that with DMO Xian's strength, he would not be trapped. But it was obvious that the other party had purposely set a trap for DMO Xian. She would still worry and be afraid. At least, she had to be safe and sound until DMO Xian returned. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath, trying her best to make her expression look calm and indifferent. However, before she could open her mouth again, intending to get more information about the Dark Nether Palace from him, suddenly he felt a cold breeze on his cheek. Yiqing Luo seemed to have a reflex reaction as she evaded the attack and the palm wind fell downwards. "Bitch! I want you dead." Hao Nanren's hysterical roar came into her ears. At the moment when Yiqing Luo's palm wind descended, he didn't evade at all. Instead, he faced Yiqing Luo's palm wind and pressed forward. Hao Nanren's profound grade was sealed by Yiqing Luo's pills. All that was left was brute force. At some point in time, a dagger had appeared in his hand. Facing Yiqing Luo's palm wind, the dagger in his hand stabbed fiercely towards Yiqing Luo's body. Yiqing Luo retaliated out of reflex. With how much Hao Nanren cherished his life, he would definitely avoid it. She had never expected that Hao Nanren would disregard everything and try to kill her. The palm hit Hao Nanren's chest. But the dagger in his hand also stabbed towards Yiqing Luo's body. Yiqing Luo had not expected this. When the dagger fell, it was also too late to dodge. Damn it. Suddenly, he heard a low reprimand. She felt her body lighten. She was pulled back a little. The pain that he had imagined did not fall. After Yiqing Luo steadied herself, she raised her eyes to take a look. Immediately he was stunned on the spot. In front of her was the palace master of the Dark Abyss Palace, who was dressed in a black robe and whose face couldn't be seen. His hand was gripping the dagger with his bare hand. The sharp edge of the blade cut his palm. Blood oozed out. And that Hao Nanrin, who was about 200 over kilograms, was also sent flying. You. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as her thoughts ran wild. The words that were in her mouth couldn't come out. What on earth was going on? Had this world become a fantasy? What? Would the palace master of the Dark Abyss Palace block this dagger for her with his bare hand? Master Mo is taking part in the QQ Readings April Book Comments section activity. I hope that the babies are able to actively participate and help Master Mo and 7th Miss to fight for a ranking. The activity content was as follows. These were the tasks that the activity had assigned and must be completed by Master Mo in the QQ Reading app. 1. Master Mo will post a book comments post in the book comments section, hoping that the babies will actively like and reply. 2. Hoping that the babies will actively leave a comment in the book comments section and interact with Master Mo. Master Mo will reply one by one and will add more details according to the content. 3. For the latest chapter, I hope that the babies will leave a comment. Every comment and comment will also be counted as a ranking of points. 4. QQ Readings, Great God said. Master Mo will adjust to 10 book coins per question. After Master Mo answers, I hope that the babies will leave a comment under the Great God's comment and interact with Master Mo. Master Mo likes to research on pseudo sounds and is not a professional pseudo student. You can try to answer the babies' questions with a mature sister's voice, Lolita's voice and young girl's voice. The babies can casually tease Master Mo. Master Mo had always said that the continuation of a book was not only due to Master Mo's efforts alone. Along the way, the babies' support and love were indispensable in this activity, not to mention the top 10 or top 3. As long as we are not at the bottom, we will not let down your support and love for 7th Miss, and will not let you down. That is enough. No matter what the result is, this is a glory that belongs to all of us. Chapter 3357. After the shock and astonishment, Yiqing Luo reflexively congealed her expression as she looked at the palace lord alertly and asked coldly, "What tricks are you trying to play now?" The palace lord scoffed as he slowly raised his head and looked at his hand, which was filled with blood. Following that, he casually threw the dagger onto the ground. The dagger, which was stained with blood, made a clang sound as it landed on the ground, which was littered with bones. He shook his bleeding hand as he gave a mocking smile. "This palace saved you, and your words are really hurtful." Saved? Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as her expression turned increasingly vigilant. "Are you trying to play the trick of injuring yourself? Trying to use this to move me so that I will listen to your arrangements?" The palace master of Netherworld Palace suddenly stopped talking. Even his swaying hand froze. Not sure if it was an illusion. Yiqing Luo somehow felt that there was a deathly stillness coming from him. Which sentence was it that had stabbed him this time? Yiqing Luo felt that this man was really hard to get along with. Why did she feel that every sentence he said could step on his minefield? Yiqing Luo felt very tired. Suddenly, the palace lord raised his head as though he sensed something as he raised his hand towards Yiqing Luo's arm. Yiqing Luo instinctively evaded. "What are you trying to do?" "You." His hoarse voice just spat out a word. Just at this moment, a few loud bang 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 sounds were heard as the entire graveyard was suddenly bombarded. The ground shook as a small crack appeared. Yiqing Luo's body couldn't stop shaking. It was at this instant that he grabbed her wrist tightly. Yiqing Luo didn't manage to shake it off in time. Her body suddenly tightened. The palace lord pulled her along as he sprinted madly towards another direction. His other hand, which was still dripping blood, hung by the side of his body. Blood flowed as it dripped onto the ground. "What are you going to do?" Yiqing Luo hadn't figured out where did that explosion sound came from as she was pulled along by him as they ran with all their might. She panted lightly as she spat out 3 words. She could feel a strong, vast, and majestic dark force eroding the entire graveyard. It made her feel a suffocating feeling. What was this energy? What was going on? Damn it, too late. He could vaguely hear the hoarse voice of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace reprimanding him. Then, halted by his sudden movement, she bumped into his broad, hard back. Her entire face was smashed into his back. Yiqing Luo didn't have the chance to rebuke. Because she covered her mouth and nose, and the moment she raised her head, they saw a figure dressed in a black robe, the same as the palace master of the Dark Palace, standing before them. Looking at the figure, it should be the physique of a man. His black robe fluttered even though there was no wind. His robe fluttered wildly, like a sharp blade baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, as if wanting to devour everything. That majestic and powerful aura. It was released from this person's body. Yiqing Luo's expression changed slightly. Who was this person? It actually had such a powerful aura. Furthermore, this person's strength was definitely on par with the Palace Master of Gloomy Palace. She could not sense the aura of the Palace Master of the Nether Palace. That was because the Palace Master of Gloomy Palace had purposely concealed his aura. However, the person in front of him was different. That unbridled and arrogant arrogance. Majestic and powerful, boundless and boundless. It was just this pressure. It was enough to oppress her until she was almost out of breath. Chapter 3358. The Palace Lord's figure stiffened as he bellowed in a deep and cold voice. The Overlord has already followed the original plan and entered the Dark Array. How did I spoil it? That man's head moved. Yiqing Luo could feel that the gaze which was shot over from that man was as cold as a knife. That man asked, "Where do you want to bring her to?" The Palace Lord's aura turned gloomier and gloomier as his voice became even tighter. "I naturally want to bring her back to the Palace of Darkness." His words paused as he seemed to be impatient as he frowned. "Since when is it your turn to tell me what to do? If I don't come, do you think that you can still keep your life?" That man scoffed coldly as his tone had no respect towards the Palace Lord at all. Yiqing Luo could tell. Although the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace kept on saying, this Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace didn't say anything. But in actual fact towards that man he was obviously on his guard and apprehensive. Since he was the Palace Lord of the Palace on the surface. In the Palace of Darkness, other than the real mastermind, who else did he need to be wary of? But it was very obvious. The man in front of him was definitely not the mastermind. After hearing that man's words, the Palace Lord's body tensed up even more. That hand which was dripping with blood was clenched tightly. When Yiqing Luo saw that, the uneasiness in her heart grew even more. If it was this Palace Lord, she would be able to feel slightly more at ease. Because she could feel it. This Palace Lord didn't have any special evil intentions. But the man in front of her was different. The aura around his body was purposely released towards her. Furthermore, it was filled with malicious intent. Even though she couldn't see his face, she could also feel his bone-piercing gaze. "Your mission has ended, I'll handle the rest." That man opened his mouth once again as his voice was as cold as ice. The figure which was blocking in front of Yiqing Luo stiffened once again but didn't leave. "This is my mission. It should be completed by me. Just based on you, when will you be able to bring this woman back?" That man was filled with disdain. "Anyway, as long as she's left with one breath, it's not important how I bring her back." As soon as he finished speaking, a burst of chilling aura charged towards Yiqing Luo's direction in a domineering and overbearing manner. It was an irresistible pressure. This caused Yiqing Luo's expression to change unpredictably. At the bottom of his heart, a wave of shock surged up. This person he really wanted to kill. Yiqing Luo swiftly raised her glower flame fan and her footwork was about to display her intention to retreat from behind the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace. However, the force gripping her wrist tightened its grip on her. She couldn't escape at all. Damn it. There was no way to avoid this powerful dark force. He could only take it head-on. However, the man who was holding her arm suddenly waved his sleeve. Majestic profound waves spread out in all directions. It collided with that person's ferocious attack. The man growled, "I don't need you. This is my prey." Bang bang bang, the two forces collided in the air. Profound waves vibrated. Severed limbs and dried bones flew everywhere in the graveyard. The three of them stood steadily in the midst of this chi wave. No, to put it more accurately. Yiqing Luo was forcefully pulled by the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace so that she wouldn't be sent flying after the collision of the two forces. But her internal organs weren't feeling well. Chapter 3359. The Palace Lord straightened his back as his voice turned cold. "Are you trying to fight with me?" That man sneered, "I'm saving you." "I don't need it." The Palace Lord replied decisively, "I know very well what I'm doing." "I think you don't know what you're doing." That man's vision seemed to have swept past the Palace Lord's hand which was cut by the dagger. Looking at that hand which was filled with fresh blood, and the blood was dripping down. That man's smile turned even colder. "Either I do it or you bring her back to the Palace Lord." The Palace Lord seemed as though he wanted to rebuke something. But he lowered his eyes and took a look at his own hand which was dripping blood. He hung his head down. His tensed-up body slowly turned around facing Yiqing Luo. He looked at Yiqing Luo's face as his voice turned chilly. Go. Yiqing Luo's brows creased tightly as she took a step back. Her brows were filled with alertness towards him. Although, as compared to that man who suddenly appeared earlier, this palace lord of the palace lord seemed to be helping her. But who knew if this was a trick played by the palace lord? One white face and one black face. Then he deceived her just like that to willingly fall into the pit. Seeing the distrust in Yiqing Luo's eyes, the palace lord's mood sunk once again. He suddenly raised his hand and locked her wrist. Pulling her, he took big steps towards that man's direction. Yiqing Luo's expression changed. Let go. Before Dmo Xian returned, she couldn't possibly leave with him. The strength of his fingers increased. If you leave with me now, you'll suffer less. I won't leave with you. Yiqing Luo's other hand climbed onto his fingers as she forcefully pried his hand away. Palace lord of the palace lord of the palace, this kind of action of yours, not to mention your companions will misunderstand you, even I feel that you're secretly in love with me. The palace lord's hand was violently flung away. He stared at Yiqing Luo. He didn't say a word for a long time. That low pressure made Yiqing Luo's heart trembled. Did she say anything wrong? It was obviously him playing the role of the good cop for no reason. It was hard not to be misunderstood. All right. A gust of cold wind brushed past his face. She saw that person stand between her and the palace master of the secluded darkness palace. He was getting closer and closer. Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the chilly murderous intent from that person. She frowned in alarm, her expression tense. That man didn't hesitate as he abruptly raised his hand and his profound energy exploded as his palm wind surged and struck towards Yiqing Luo. It was extremely fast. Even the palace master of the Netherworld Palace didn't have time to react. Why are you dilly-dallying? I can't stand it anymore. How much time do you want to waste? Just cripple him and bring him back to complete the mission. The credit is yours. That person shouted impatiently. His hand movements became increasingly swift and fierce. The surging energy in the air caused people to be shocked. That person's attack was simply too unexpected. Yiqing Luo, who had sensed the dangerous aura, almost reflexively displayed her footwork. Under the palm wind, a red dress flashed past like the setting sun. Rumble. The deafening cracking sound caused the entire graveyard to collapse. You actually dodged it? That person was slightly shocked and then laughed. Indeed interesting. Ghost King. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace shouted sternly, You've interfered with this palace's mission time and time again. This palace has the right to punish you for the crime of insubordination. The black-robed man who was addressed as Ghost King paused slightly. In his laughter, there was a faint hint of a smile. April Fool's Small Theater. Overlord upholds the rule of the husband. Yiqing Luo, smiling and waving Xian, come over Dmo Xian, hugging we've only left for a short while and Lil Luo, are already misses me? Yiqing Luo, pushing him stop fooling around. I have a very serious matter to tell you. Dmo Xian, evil smile alright Lil Luo, or you say it. Yiqing Luo, staring at him solemnly listen carefully what I want to say is I don't. What? Dmo Xian staring at her Yiqing Luo clutching his lapel hey. Do you understand what I'm saying? What kind of attitude is this? Dmo Xian raising his eyebrows I understand. Yiqing Luo, don't you have anything to say? Dmo Xian smiling what do you mean? Yiqing Luo, exasperated I said I don't like you anymore. I don't want to be with you anymore. Shouldn't you be begging me, coaxing me and pampering me so that I'll change my mind? Dmo Xian continuing to smile oh no need. Yiqing Luo, unhappy again. Turning to leave, Dmo Xian hooking her waist Lil Luo. Yiqing Luo, turning her head away from him don't touch me. I'm very angry now the kind that can't even be coaxed by kissing, hugging and raising me up high. Dmo Xian hugging her tightly sighing I know what day it is over there. Yiqing Luo, dazed how did you know? Dmo Xian. Previously when I went to the 21st century I wanted to understand you and specially inquired about the customs over there. Yiqing Luo, dazed you're an ancient person is it really good not to follow my routine? Dmo Xian, April Fool's Day, everything said is ironic so. Lil Luo, said she doesn't like me actually she likes me very much, right? Yiqing Luo, turning her head to leave I didn't say anything again. Goodbye. Dmo Xian, locking her waist tightly, lifting her chin Lil Luo, although I know you're saying ironic but hearing Lil Luo's mouth saying such hurtful words, my heart still feels very uncomfortable. Yiqing Luo, looking at the man's approaching face, resisting to no avail. What do you want to do? Chapter 3360. But Ghost King didn't respond to the palace lord. His figure flashed as he passed by the palace lord and pounced towards Yiqing Luo again. His entire body was filled with a murderous aura. The chilly aura enveloped Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's pupils dilated. Her long eyelashes trembled uncontrollably. This chilly aura? It made her limbs numb and unable to move at all. Even if she wanted to avoid it, she was suppressed by his aura. This man. What level was the profound grade? He was so powerful. She was about to step into the legendary stage, a sage profound grade, but she couldn't even withstand his aura. Ghost King. The palace master of Netherworld Palace roared, his tone filled with rage. Since Palace Lord wants to punish, then punish. But, in order for the mission to proceed smoothly, I will take over and bring this prey back. Ghost King's tone was very calm, totally disregarding his anger. And with a wave of his sleeves, he took out a rope and tied up the palace master of the secluded palace. The palace lord was so angry that he cursed. But the more he struggled, the rope that was tied on his body was wrapped even tighter. Just as Ghost King's attention was placed on the palace lord, Yiqing Luo was following Old Man Song's instructions, slowly circulating the profound chi in her profound jade heart, slowly releasing it to resist the invisible pressure. Like a warm current of profound chi, it spread out in her body bit by bit, and lingered around her limbs and bones. That suffocating feeling in her chest finally felt much more comfortable. Ghost King's reaction was very sharp. Yiqing Luo's aura fluctuated slightly. He had already speedily fixed his vision on Yiqing Luo. Even the cloak couldn't hide the chill in his eyes. You can still resist my pressure? Ghost King's tone was filled with interest. I really can't underestimate you. While they were talking, Yiqing Luo only felt a chilly wind blowing by her cheek. A stinging pain eroded from her shoulder. Ghost King unknowingly stood in front of her again. One hand pinched her shoulder. 5 fingers exerted force and Yiqing Luo could clearly hear a crack sound coming from her body. Yiqing Luo gave a muffled groan. The intense pain caused cold sweat to seep out of her forehead. Her dislocated shoulder caused her to be unable to move her right hand. This restricted her from using the glowing flame fan with her right hand. Yiqing Luo's breathing congealed as she endured the intense pain on her shoulder. She lifted her left hand and flipped her palm to hit the arm that was lying across her shoulder. That palm strike was ruthless. The Ghost King's hand instinctively retreated. Yiqing Luo immediately retreated, avoiding the Ghost King's attack range. Shortly after, he quickly grabbed the glowing flame fan with his left hand. Profound chi gathered and with a flick of his fingers, the glowing flame fan was like a raging flame, blossoming with raging flames. Bang! There was an explosion in the air. The powerful and vast profound energy surged violently. The Ghost King was also pushed back 2 steps by that palm strike. He raised his hand and looked at the arm that had been hit. His entire body was filled with coldness. The black yin chi in the surroundings was constantly twisting and swirling. His figure looked hazy and blurry. This person called Ghost King was not easy to deal with. No, to put it more accurately, she couldn't deal with him at all. If it wasn't for Old Man Song's timely guidance on how to retract his profound energy and escape from that person's demonic claws, there was a possibility that her entire right hand would have been broken by the Ghost King. The disparity between their abilities was just too huge, if this carried on. Chapter 3361. No way. Xian had yet to walk out of that so-called dark formation. She absolutely could not let the Nether Palace have their way. At least she had to drag it out until Xian returned. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers tightened. Half-squinted long and narrow eyes, suffused with a biting cold glint. The profound energy mobilized in the profound jade heart, quickly filled her entire body. Then she abruptly raised her right hand that was powerless to move. 5 fingers opened. Profound chi shot out. The strong air wave was like a huge wave washing the sand, surging violently. It set off layers of huge waves in the air. Her right hand's finger, a ball of cold and beautiful red light, enveloped it. The azure dew ring was burning hot on her fingertip. Yiqing Luo's aura fluctuated and continuously rose. A pair of incomparably beautiful eyes, blood red bit by bit, covered her entire pupils. Demonic, shocking people. This is... Ghost King stared at Yiqing Luo's right hand. His tone had some meaning. You actually Have the Azure Do divine weapon. He seemed to have a strong interest, his eyes stared deadly at Yiqing Luo. You can also use the Azure Do divine weapon. No wonder so many people want to get their hands on you. When Yiqing Luo released the Azure Do divine weapon's power, she could also clearly observe the surrounding situation. After hearing Ghost King's words, Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. This Ghost King was from the Nether Palace. Didn't he know that she had the Azure Do divine weapon? Wouldn't he know her profound jade heart could unlock the Azure Do divine weapon seal? Originally, the dark forces for her profound jade heart to unlock the Azure Do ring's seal. It could be said that they had racked their brains. The Nether Palace couldn't possibly not know this. Or, this Ghost King was actually not from the Nether Palace? Although we can confirm that there's nothing wrong with the Tranquility Pearl with your current body quality, it is enough to extend the fusion time between the divine weapon and the profound jade heart. But you have to be clear the other party's strength is at a height that you can't estimate. Old Man Song worriedly warned, don't force yourself too much, otherwise, with your current profound rank, if you suffer the backlash of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade, not only will you be in trouble, this East Tide continent, even the entire Nirvana realm, will become your burial goods. After all, Yiqing Luo had already advanced to Sky Profound 9th grade and was about to step into the legendary stage. How long the Azure Water Divine Artifact's power could be maintained, or how many times it could be used in succession, all of these numbers had to be calculated anew. If it exceeded a certain limit, even with the heart-calming bead suppressing the restlessness of the Profound Heart Jade, Xiaochen was not able to control it. He was afraid that something might happen to them. Yiqing Luo's fingers clenched tightly, her blood-colored bewitching eyes were filled with killing intent. I understand. He paused. Her figure suddenly darted and appeared beside the Ghost King. He moved his left hand. The gourd flame fan unfurled and slashed out sharp wind blades. This sudden movement. When the Ghost King realized this, he tried to dodge. Yiqing Luo's figure had already entangled him like a shadow. Bang! That gourd flame fan, which was like a blossoming flame, directly entered the Ghost King's body through his back. The Ghost King gave a muffled groan and turned his hand to grab Yiqing Luo's injured right hand. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes turned cold and her footsteps swayed. Not only did she avoid the Ghost King's counterattack, she also raised her leg and gathered profound energy towards the Ghost King's abdomen and gave a fierce kick. Dong! The Ghost King's body flew out in a straight line. The ground shook and a huge pit exploded as gravel flew everywhere. Hiss! Amidst the billowing smoke and dust, a low and hoarse sound of sucking in cold air was heard. Chapter 3362. No wonder it's the power of a divine relic. That hoarse voice could be vaguely heard again. Smoke and dust rolled. Ghost King's figure was faintly discernible. It gradually became clear. His robe was slightly messy and there were a few pieces of cloth hanging on it. It seemed that Yiqing Luo's counterattack. It didn't cause no harm to Ghost King at all. Yes. Before you die, to be able to taste the power of a divine relic, it's not a waste for you to come to the lower realm. You should thank me. Yiqing Luo's pale lips curved slightly. An evil smile bloomed on the corners of her lips. Between his brows, there was a captivating, oppressive cold smile on his face. Her words fell. Yiqing Luo's fingers clenched again. The red light on the Azure Do ring bloomed even more dazzling. Majestic, profound light, piercingly sharp. The momentum was majestic like the surging waves. No matter how one looked at it, it was soul-stirring. But if someone looked closely, it could be seen. That young lady who released this powerful force. Cold sweat kept seeping out from her forehead, drop by drop, dripping down, soaking her robe. That beautiful face that could topple cities was extremely pale. Her brows were knitted tightly, her eyes were sharp as if it was bearing great pain. But the young lady's movements were smooth without any pause. The momentum released. It was completely different from what it showed on the surface. Bam! Another loud crash resounded. Ghost King's attack collided with Yiqing Luo's attack. Both of them retreated a few steps back. A violent hurricane howled, rolling up the Ghost King's cloak. Yiqing Luo didn't give Ghost King a chance to catch his breath. Her left hand clenched again, feeling the burning power of the Azure Do ring. She leapt up, the glower flame fan flipped, the profound light burst out. Ah! Young lady, you believe too much in the power of a divine relic. Ghost King sneered, his eyes were filled with malice. Half squinting his malicious eyes, looking at Yi Qing Luo's profound qi-boundless attack. He sneered. The moment Yi Qing Luo approached, he raised his hand and grabbed Yi Qing Luo's wrist. Yi Qing Luo felt a sharp pain. She wanted to pull her hand away. But how could the Ghost King give her this chance? Her slender little hand was tightly grasped in Ghost King's palm. The Ghost King laughed coldly. Little girl, I'm afraid you've forgotten that with your current strength, the divine weapon is nothing but a useless object in your hands. His vision turned towards Yi Qing Luo's finger, at that azure aqua ring which was suffused with a red glow. The eyes beneath the cloak revealed a look of greed. A divine artifact, for you to use is a waste of a heavenly treasure. Why don't I take over the divine artifact and display its true might? Saying that, Ghost King's finger flashed and turned into a hand knife, chopping towards Yi Qing Luo's wrist. Shockingly, he wanted to chop off Yi Qing Luo's hand directly. *CK. *CK. If you want the divine artifact, then say it openly. What was the point of stepping on the high and flattering the low? Damn it. They wanted to snatch her divine artifact. It also depended on whether she agreed or not. Yi Qing Luo's blood-colored eyes flashed a strange red glow. When the Ghost King's hand blade fell, she endured the sharp pain and turned her wrist over. The glower flame fan in her hand turned into a revolving sharp blade, spinning rapidly towards Ghost King's face. Ghost King was caught off guard. He didn't expect Yi Qing Luo to be able to counterattack under such circumstances. When the sharp blade separated the cloak on his face, he then reacted and quickly let go of Yi Qing Luo, dodging backwards. Only, no matter how fast his reaction was, that revolving sharp blade which was like a ball of raging fire was even faster. Chapter 3363. Yi Qing Luo took the opportunity and quickly retreated. She staggered a few steps before stabilizing her body. Then he panted heavily. Indeed. Just like what the Ghost King said. With her current strength, fusing the power of the divine weapon was still too taxing. It was only a dozen rounds of fighting. She already had a feeling that she was unable to do as she wished. Very taxing. Extremely taxing. She forcefully closed her eyes and calmed herself down. Absolutely. She had to hold on. She could not let the Ghost King succeed. At least she had to wait for Xian to return. Xian he must be trying his best to return to her side and fighting against the dark formation. So she had to hold on. She had to wait for Xian. She raised her eyes, her gaze was firm as she looked at the Ghost King. But she saw. The cloak on the Ghost King's face was cut by the glower flame fan. His face was revealed. His facial features were regular. Yi Qing Luo, who was used to seeing handsome men, felt that he was handsome. His age was around 40 to 50 years old. The side of his face was slashed by the glowing flame fan, and blood was flowing out of it. Not sure if it was an illusion. When she saw the Ghost King's face, Yi Qing Luo actually had a kind of familiar feeling. But after a careful look, she felt that this was a stranger. A stranger she had never seen before. Just now, that fleeting sense of familiarity. What was going on? Young lady. Good, very good. You actually dare to hurt me. The Ghost King's eyes were filled with intense anger. He slowly wiped the blood on his face. His eyes were filled with a treacherous cold glint. Not good. Was he is angry. Old Man Song was shocked. If he is serious, you will be in trouble. He suddenly said firmly, I will come out to help you. No need. Yi Qing Luo immediately stopped him. The other party is from the upper realm. If you appear, he will definitely know. The Azure Dew bracelet is on me. No matter what. The secret of the Azure Dew bracelet must be concealed. Otherwise, once those ambitious people knew the whereabouts of the Azure Dew bracelet, they would definitely come to snatch it. After facing the Ghost King, Yi Qing Luo was very clear. If those people from the upper realm forcefully snatched the Azure Dew bracelet, she wouldn't be able to block it. But Old Man Song was anxious and worried at the same time. Girl, the other party obviously came prepared. The venerable sovereign is trapped in the dark formation. Even a venerable sovereign would need some time to get out of that formation. Plus, we don't know what tricks the dark secluded palace have played in the formation. On top of that, there's obviously a formation set up around this tomb that targets your mental power. It's impossible for you to get those same beasts to come out and help. When Yi Qing Luo heard that, she was stunned. How could that be? Sealed my spiritual power? Then, aren't we still in contact? That's because I've advanced during this period of time, and the connection between us has also increased. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to contact me now. He had to admit it. While Yi Qing Luo was using Hao Nanren as bait, Darkness Palace's trap within a trap had to be even more careful. Targeted at DMO Xian. Targeted at Yi Qing Luo. Arrangements had been made. After all, the might of Yi Qing Luo's few sacred beasts was simply too huge. If Yi Qing Luo were to pull those sacred beasts out for a walk, even if the Palace Lord of Darkness and Ghost King joined hands, they would probably find it strenuous. So this illusionary tomb was targeted at Yi Qing Luo's mental power. When Yi Qing Luo stepped into the palace she had seen previously. Chapter 3364. Yi Qing Luo tried to sense the pet space. Sure enough, she couldn't contact her companions in the space. She pursed her lips tightly, the light in her blood-red eyes kept darting around. After a while, she fixed her gaze on Ghost King. I can do it. Old Man Song, even without Chi-Chi and the rest, it doesn't matter. After all, I'm the only one who can have the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade, and also the one chosen by the Azure Water Artifact. After she finished speaking, her slender fingers clenched tightly again. That slightly unstable aura once again began to rise. On her fingertip, the Azure Water Ring flashed with red light. Because of this, Yi Qing Luo didn't notice. On the other side of the Azure Water Ring, that red jade Profound Phoenix Ring was also faintly emitting a faint light. All of her energy, all concentrated on the artifact. She circulated the power of the Profound Heart Jade and began to explore bit by bit towards her wrist. What? Old Man Song realized Yi Qing Luo's intention and his expression changed greatly. You still want to release the power of the Azure Water Artifact? No, absolutely not. Old Man Song was about to rush out from the Azure Dew bracelet. Your body can't withstand the power of two artifacts. Even if you have the Tranquility Pearl, the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade will be unstable. Old Man Song saw that Yi Qing Luo was still mobilizing her profound energy, and his aura exploded. He was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. Lass, if the Overlord is here, she will absolutely not let you do this. If the Overlord painstakingly comes out from the dark formation, and something happens to you because of the backlash from the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade, what will the Overlord do? Don't worry, Yi Qing Luo slowly closed her eyes, her voice slightly trembling. Since the artifact chose me, then it must be something that belongs to me. If I can't conquer it, even if I contract the artifact like what Ghost King said, it's just a useless thing. Success was always accompanied by risks. If she didn't try, how would she know that she couldn't control the artifact's power? This was an artifact that belonged to her. It should be conquered by her. The dark force had already entered the thin red line on his wrist. Azure Water Chain. This was the second Azure Water Divine artifact she had obtained from the 21st century plane. He fused the power of the Azure Water Ring and the Azure Water Chain together. It should be enough to deal with the Ghost King. Even if he couldn't kill the Ghost King, at the very least he could buy some time. You. Old Man Song was unable to refute Yi Qing Luo's words. He indeed admired this point of Yi Qing Luo the most. Confident but not conceited. He also had the courage to challenge, instead of going with the flow. After a while he sighed. Forget it, I will accompany you. If the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade really suffers a backlash, I will definitely stop it even if I have to use all my soul power. Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly. Then he focused all his attention on the two divine artifacts. She guided the power of the two divine artifacts to fuse. Sure enough, it was as she had expected. When the power of the two divine artifacts fused together, it was as if it had its own consciousness. They quickly intertwined with each other. The fusion of the two energies was very smooth. But the main body that received these two powers, only Yi Qing Luo wasn't feeling too good right now. This body of hers, releasing the power of the Azure Water Ring was already strenuous enough. Adding on the power of the Azure Water Chain once it fused, she felt the internal organs in her body were burning in pain, as if they were being burned by a raging flame. Chapter 3365. The fusion of the two god relics' energy was still moving about excitedly. The blood-colored glow encircled Yi Qing Luo's surroundings. It enveloped Yi Qing Luo within it, like a blood-colored protective cover. This scene made the infuriated Ghost King squint his sinister eyes. That sinister and ruthless face was a bit pale. Young lady, you really don't want your life anymore? The terrifying profound glow on Yi Qing Luo's body was still increasing. Ghost King's face was gloomy as his palm wind moved and struck towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Bam! Ghost King had no way to get close to Yi Qing Luo. His body was sent flying by a strong impact. It was the blood-colored protective cover which encircled Yi Qing Luo's surroundings. Ghost King fell onto the ground and was forced to slide a few meters back by the impact. His robe was cut by the sharp bones and stones on the ground, and a large piece of flesh was cut off. His brows twitched in pain as he swiftly sat up straight and looked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. How is this possible? How could her profound grade continue to increase? Isn't she afraid that her body can't take such a load? Ghost King frowned in disbelief. The place where he fell was not far from where the Palace Lord of Secluded Palace was tied up. Coincidentally, the Palace Lord of Secluded Palace could hear Ghost King's words clearly. Palace Lord of Secluded Palace was extremely shocked. He looked at Yi Qing Luo's right hand, which was broken by Ghost King as it kept on encircling Yi Qing Luo and seeping into her body. Following that, he looked at Yi Qing Luo's profound energy, as it continued to rise at an extremely terrifying speed. Even in Secluded Palace. Using the method which he instructed. No one was able to do it like what Yi Qing Luo was doing now to keep on rising terrifying power. If this went on, it would really be like what Ghost King said. Yi Qing Luo's body was unable to take the load of this energy. Once she suffered the backlash from the profound Jade Heart, Yi Qing Luo would die. Palace Lord of Secluded Palace struggled anxiously. Palace Lord of Secluded Palace's movement naturally attracted Ghost King's attention. The Ghost King looked at the Palace Master of the Nether Palace with an ugly expression. How many divine weapons does she have? Didn't you set up a trap for this little girl and His Majesty before coming here? How could there be a change? The Palace Lord of Ethereal Palace stared intently at Yi Qing Luo's direction. Hearing the Ghost King's words, the eyes under the black cloak flickered slightly. Unconsciously, his gaze became gentler. Indeed, as long as Yi Qing Luo was around, no matter how meticulous the plan was, there will be changes. Because the girl herself was a variable. Yi Qing Luo didn't know that Ghost King and the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness were astonished by the current situation. There was only one feeling in her heart. Damn it. She was dying of pain. After the power of the two divine artifacts fused together, the profound chi seemed to have been injected with stimulants as it surged continuously in his body. It passed through every tendon and vein. It passed through every inch of flesh. And this dash. It was as if a sharp blade had ruthlessly sliced him. It was like a ball of raging fire, burning furiously. If it wasn't for the fact that her willpower was strong enough, she probably would have fainted from the pain. Chapter 3366. Last, this is the profound heart Jade's warning to you. Old Man Song sighed and knew that no matter how he dissuaded her, he would not be able to dispel Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. The more clearly, the more worried Old Man Song was. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's head full of cold sweat from the pain and her forcefully enduring the pain, Old Man Song also felt that he was empathizing with her. If one looked closely, one would probably be able to see that Yi Qing Luo's delicate body was currently trembling slightly. Nothing. She closed her eyes and deeply felt the profound energy in her body. Although, her body was in pain. Like it was about to swell. Like it was about to tear her soul apart. But Yi Qing Luo's heart was not the least bit flustered. She was not trying to be brave. But, he felt a strange power. That was the power mixed in with the pain. She did not know how to describe this feeling. There was an inexplicable kind of obsession. As long as she could combine the power of the divine artifact and deeply find that mixed power, it would definitely be of great help to her. This was like touching a barrier when her profound grade was promoted. As long as she broke through that barrier, then she would be able to promote. Her strength could be promoted. This mysterious and unfathomable power, it was a barrier. Break this barrier. She could completely conquer the divine artifact. Not only that, she couldn't use the divine artifact. But, although she had the obsession, in fact it was not that easy to achieve. At least, the pain in her body had already made her somewhat unable to withstand it. She knitted her thin brows tightly. Her breathing was slightly hurried. She wanted to calm her mind. He tried his best to see that strange power clearly, to explore that barrier. But the more she wanted to explore it, that pain in her body that was like a sharp blade cutting through her bones and a raging flame deepened a bit. Motherf asterisk her. What the hell was this power? Yi Qing Luo tried her best to maintain her consciousness. Suddenly, the two powers of the divine artifact fiercely shook in her body. Yiqing Luo only felt that something was expanding in her body. She even felt that. His body was like a balloon that was getting bigger and bigger. It grew bigger and bigger. Her heart skipped a beat, and her breathing became even tighter. The feeling of pain. She didn't even hear Old Man Song's worry. His forehead was covered with dense cold sweat. Her delicate body trembled even more violently. Just when she felt that her body was about to explode, suddenly he felt a gentle feeling in his head. It was as if a warm and soft palm was gently caressing her head. Then, her eyelashes, which were tightly shut, suddenly trembled. Her delicate body also trembled. Soon after, the heart-wrenching pain and burning sensation in his body were extinguished by this warm and refreshing feeling. What followed closely behind? It was a comfortable, soft, and cool feeling that flowed through her limbs and bones. The power of the fusion of divine weapons. Surprisingly, he was also well-behaved. Lasp, lasp. Beside his ear was Old Man Song's anxious and panicked shouts. Yiqing Luo was startled by this sound as she opened her eyes. In her mind, Old Man Song's joyful voice rang again. "Lass, you scared me to death. Luckily you're fine, fine." Yiqing Luo was still in a daze. She moved her body. She discovered that her body seemed to have been reborn. Light like a feather. Even the right shoulder that was broken by Ghost King had recovered its original liveliness. Star. Chapter 3367. Was this the change caused by the fusion of the divine weapon? In other words, she succeeded? The change in Yiqing Luo's body. As a weapon spirit, Old Man Song could naturally feel it. After confirming that Yiqing Luo's body wasn't affected by the power of the divine weapon fusion, and instead successfully conquered the power of the divine weapon, he was so ecstatic that he almost jumped out of the Azure Dew bracelet. "Girl, you're amazing. How did you do it? You actually withstood the power of the divine weapon fusion. It's simply incredible." Old Man Song had hypothesized many possibilities. He also thought that Yiqing Luo could conquer the power of the divine weapon fusion, but he never thought, not only did she conquer the power of the divine weapon fusion. Because of this power, her body had been reborn. It could be said that Yiqing Luo now was the new her. Her body was even more perfect than before after she used the cleansing marrow pill. Almost no impurities could be found in her body. It could even be said, Yiqing Luo was about to leave the mortal body. Hearing Old Man Song's shock, Yiqing Luo was slightly startled. She was surprised. "Old Man Song, just now, when my breath was in a mess and I was almost devoured by the power of the two divine weapons, wasn't it you? Wasn't it you who placed your palm on my head and helped me suppress the power of the divine weapons? Just now at the critical moment. That soft palm on her head, wasn't it Old Man Song's?" What? What palm? What suppression? Old Man Song was at a loss. Yiqing Luo was startled again, her long eyelashes slightly trembled and immediately lowered her eyes. Not Old Man Song. So where did the energy that helped her just now come from? Who was it? What? Would choose to help her suppress the power of the divine weapon? Let her successfully conquer the divine weapon? "Girl, don't worry about the palm or suppression, look over there." Old Man Song suddenly reminded. Yiqing Luo recovered from her deep thoughts and looked towards the direction where the profound energy was the most turbulent. Ah! A deafening roar sounded, shaking the heavens and earth. Only to see the disheveled Ghost King, both feet firmly planted into the ground, both hands clenched into fists, his entire body tensed up, every line smooth. He roared again and again. The profound energy in his body was also rising at an extremely terrifying speed. His clothes and black hair fluttered in the strong wind as he bared his fangs and brandished his claws. "He must have realized what you were thinking and wanted to take the opportunity to cripple you," Old Man Song solemnly said. "Although you've fused with the power of two divine weapons, this power isn't yours after all. I'm unable to estimate how long it will last. So you must be careful. The opponent's profound rank is not low, and his overall strength is definitely not weak." Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips and responded seriously. She looked at the Ghost King warily. Even after fusing with the power of two divine artifacts, Old Man Song still warned her to be careful of the Ghost King. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the Ghost King's strength was. Facing such an unknown and powerful enemy, she had to be careful. Just at this moment, that man who was howling suddenly shot his vision towards Yiqing Luo. In his eyes, a valiant profound aura shot out two gusts of cold wind directly towards Yiqing Luo's face. "Shio! A strong wind cut through the sky. Chapter 3368. But the Yi Qing Luo who had been reborn had an extremely acute sense of danger. In the instance when Ghost King's vision looked over, Yi Qing Luo reflexively leaped up and turned into a red ray, disappearing into the air. Young lady, I didn't expect you to have 2 divine armaments on you. It's not a waste for me to specially rush over today. Ha ha ha. Ghost King's words had just ended. He had accurately located Yi Qing Luo's current position. Yi Qing Luo had not even stabilized herself when Ghost King's next attack had already arrived. Yi Qing Luo's fingertips moved and the glower flame fan opened up, suddenly releasing a red barrier. Violent and ferocious profound energy crashed onto the barrier. Rumble, 2 bursts of energy suddenly exploded. Violent profound energy blended with the heaven and earth. The surrounding air seemed to have been frozen by an invisible force. The explosive aura made Yi Qing Luo's breathing difficult. This Ghost King was indeed not to be underestimated. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased tightly as she speedily evaded Ghost King's attack. Her figure was as swift as lightning. Her movements were as smooth as flowing water. Violent and terrifying profound energy kept spreading outwards. After exchanging over 10 moves with Ghost King, the both of them took a step back. But Yi Qing Luo's expression didn't change. But the fishy sweetness in her throat indicated that she wasn't as calm as she looked. This round of exchange. In fact, she was the one at a disadvantage. What was the background of this Ghost King? His ability had actually reached such a level? Even the power of 2 divine armaments combined couldn't even contend against him? She didn't take the risk earlier. Wouldn't she be carried by Ghost King directly to secluded palace now? Yi Qing Luo's fingers clenched tightly, feeling the surrounding heaven and earth's profound energy twining around her. After the transformation of her body, after her ability had increased, her body's transformation was indeed huge. Now she could even feel the presence of the palace lord of secluded palace who was tied to one side. One must know that before this, even if the palace lord of secluded palace stood in front of her, she wouldn't be able to sense his presence. But now she could sense it. This meant that the palace lord's ability and now her ability after fusing with the divine armaments were on par. And now she was probably no match for the Ghost King. That was to say, Ghost King was more powerful than the palace master of Gloomy Palace. Who exactly was this Ghost King? He didn't look like he was from the Dark Nether Palace. However, he had been helping the Palace of Netherworld. Could it be, was he also an outsider like Zhu Wuxin who worked with the Palace of Darkness? The power of a divine artifact is indeed extraordinary. Even a mortal like you can grow to this extent. The Ghost King laughed coldly. His face was filled with a satisfied grin. He slowly raised his hands and laughed a little crazily. Divine artifact. I must get it. Ah, this is my divine artifact. When he raised his hand, it brought along a violent and ferocious profound energy. Endless waves of chi began to surge. The dark and gloomy sky also seemed to have turned into a ball of mist, and started to gather towards the center of his palm bit by bit. That terrifying aura. It was as if it could destroy heaven and earth. Ghost King, you can't do that. Seeing this, the palace master of Gloomy Palace struggled anxiously. The ropes that bound him cut his skin and blood seeped out. Chapter 3369. Ghost King's sinister laughter didn't stop because of the palace lord's words. The horrifying aura was still circling around. His eyes were filled with sinister viciousness. She has the protection of the god relic, she won't die. Anyway, what you want is the profound jade heart in her body. Saying that, he licked his lips greedily as his voice became increasingly sinister. If I want to get the god relic, the only way is to destroy her willpower and mental power. Of course, the most convenient way was to kill Yi Qing Luo. But Secluded Palace didn't allow it. Then he could only destroy Yi Qing Luo's willpower and mental power. Then he could cut off the connection between the god relic and Yi Qing Luo. Ghost King narrowed his sinister eyes as his vast profound energy slowly moved towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. After testing the power of the god relic, I am very satisfied with it. Enough talking to yourself. Looking at the Ghost King's powerful and boundless profound chi, which was charging towards him like a hot knife through butter, the Ghost King's eyes widened. Yi Qing Luo's eyes suddenly turned cold. The glower flame fan moved. A fire dragon was formed, brandishing its claws as it circled in midair. Her brows were cold, her eyes were flowing with a burning battle intent. The fire dragon roared towards the sky. Following Yiqing Luo's control, it went against the vast profound energy released by Ghost King. Not good. Old Man Song's voice rang. The Azure Dew bracelet followed closely. What? He's serious now. You can't go head on. Old Man Song attempted to break the Azure Dew bracelet and come out to help Yiqing Luo. Just as the fire dragon was roaring upwards, Yiqing Luo felt something was wrong. Because, Ghost King's arrogance. It was totally different from when they exchanged blows previously. If at that time she could still exchange over 10 moves with Ghost King. But now, she was basically going to be killed in a second. Thinking of Ghost King's words earlier, Yiqing Luo's heart trembled. Could it be? Ghost King was actually testing the God Relic's evil power on her, to see how much impact it could have on her? Now the test was over. He was going to use his full strength? Yiqing Luo had no chance to hesitate. Ghost King's vast and boundless profound energy directly severed the fire dragon which Yiqing Luo had released. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned cold as she displayed her footwork. The glowing flame fan in his hand spun rapidly. Red light lingered and silver threads shot out. The silver threads swiftly wound around Yiqing Luo and formed a silver-edged shield. Red profound light enveloped it. Yiqing Luo's finger hooked again. The silver-edged shield smashed into the Ghost King's attack. It was this momentary pause. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as her footsteps moved swiftly. Teleportation secret technique. That's right. At this moment Yiqing Luo was displaying her teleportation secret method. This was because her previous footwork relied on her dark force to move. The Ghost King could rely on her aura to determine where she would land. But teleportation secret techniques were different. He moved silently. Even the Ghost King could not detect the fluctuation of her aura. It was too risky to use the teleportation technique. But other than that, in a short period of time, there was no better way. But she had intentionally used the glowing flame fan's 1,000-year silver threads to create the silver-edged shield which should have completely attracted the Ghost King's attention. He should not have noticed that she had displayed the teleportation secret method. Indeed, Ghost King's attention earlier was indeed attracted by that silver-edged shield. But Yiqing Luo seemed to have forgotten. In this cemetery, other than the Ghost King. Chapter 3370. The young lady instantly disappeared before his eyes. There wasn't any young lady's presence in the air. This made the palace lord's eyes widen as his eyes were filled with shock and astonishment. What kind of footwork was this? Why couldn't he sense any fluctuation in her presence? The palace lord looked at Ghost King again. He saw Ghost King looking around as though he was searching for Yiqing Luo's whereabouts. His heart trembled fiercely for a few times. If Yiqing Luo's ability was above him and Ghost King, she disappeared. They couldn't sense her presence at all. Perhaps this could be explained. But it was impossible that even Ghost King couldn't find Yiqing Luo's whereabouts. The eyes of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace flashed. Could it be? Was this another escaping skill which Yiqing Luo intentionally hid? There were always various kinds of miracles on that young lady. So, this was another miracle which she created? But this illusionary tomb was specially created to deal with Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo. How could it possibly give Yiqing Luo a chance to escape? Even if this was her miracle. And ultimately she was unable to walk out of the illusionary tomb. As expected, Ghost King disappeared silently in front of Yiqing Luo. In this half an incense's time, he wasn't able to find Yiqing Luo's presence. His eyes turned sharp. Immediately he raised both his palms. His thick palms floated a layer of black smoke, twisting aura. He opened his palms as though he was in mid-air, parting a layer of air. Immediately after, the entire graveyard started to shake violently. The graveyard cracked open like a spider web, densely packed and spreading out. The ground was filled with broken limbs as they started to fall. The cracked ground looked like a bottomless abyss. Not long later, Ghost King's vision suddenly fixed on a certain direction. Following that, his figure swayed as he dashed towards that direction. Rumble, the surroundings were still filled with deafening explosions. That direction was the most secluded corner of the tomb. It was at least 200 meters away from the battlefield earlier. And the instance when Ghost King dashed over. In the darkness, a blazing red shadow with a boundless profound light dashed out like a bolt of lightning. The surging airwaves were like raging waves, constantly surging. It's really here. The Spirit King snorted coldly, facing the incoming profound light. The strength chi in his body shook. The airwaves rolled and dispersed the dark force that was coming at them. Boom. The woman who was charging forward was shaken by this wave of energy, causing her blood and chi to surge. Her delicate body suddenly flew back a few steps. When the red figure steadied himself, he took a closer look. Wasn't it Yiqing Luo? Ghost King's malicious eyes were burning as he stared at Yiqing Luo. That piercing gaze made one tremble in fear. In particular, there was a sinister smile on his face. Little girl, you actually know teleportation? Ghost King was getting more and more interested in Yiqing Luo, a person from the lower realm. Not only did he possess two of the vast water divine artifact, his mortal body could withstand the power of a divine artifact. He actually knew the teleportation secret technique. Teleportation secret technique? How nostalgic. He didn't expect that 10,000 years had passed. He actually saw the teleportation secret technique once again in the lower realm. Who taught you the teleportation secret technique? He stared at her, the smile in his eyes was even more horrifying. Yiqing Luo's body was still a little stuffy from the earlier airwaves. Chapter 3371. Damn it. She thought that she could make use of this opportunity to leave this illusory territory. After all, she was in the trap zone set by the secluded palace. She had been suppressed too badly. If she left the tomb, she could at least summon her little companions to fight together. But she had not expected that she couldn't find the exit at all. Or perhaps there was no exit at all. After that, she was discovered by Ghost King, and was seen through by Ghost King in one look. The footwork she displayed was the blink movement secret art. That familiar reminiscing tone. Apparently, Ghost King had seen the blink movement secret art before. Even if she wanted to deny it, Ghost King probably wouldn't believe her. Blink movement secret art. The ultimate secret art used by the King of Thieves that year. Ghost King slowly walked towards Yiqing Luo. Every step seemed to condense an invisible pressure. Yiqing Luo pressed her chest. Earlier her chest was still in a state of relief from Ghost King's pressure. She saw him walking towards her again. That invisible pressure made her feel even more uncomfortable. That fishy sweetness in her throat seemed as though it was about to gush out. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly as her slender fingers clenched tightly. The hand holding the feather fan also tightened. She was on high alert as she slowly retreated. Young lady, as long as you tell me, where did you learn this blink movement secret art from? I will let you leave this place, how about that? Ghost King suddenly stopped when he was 5 steps away from Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo looked at him coldly, listening to his words which sounded like a discussion. She couldn't help but burst out laughing. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old kid? What right do you have to make me believe your words? Ghost King's expression remained unchanged as he continued. Young lady, you should be very clear that you have no capital to negotiate with me. Other than choosing to believe me, you have no other choice. Yiqing Luo laughed angrily. Why should I choose to believe you? Why should I choose to leave? My man has been placed into the darkness array by the palace lord of the secluded palace, and I will not leave until my man comes out. Ghost King, who was the one who used the blink movement secret art to escape from the tomb, saying in such a serious manner that she didn't want to leave. Did her skin need to be so thick? Yiqing Luo expressed that she was the one who wanted to leave, and this was different from asking him to let her leave. Didn't she want her face? Did she have to leave just because he asked her to? Moreover, she didn't believe him. It was that simple. The Ghost King said, Little girl, I am giving you a chance. Do you think that if I wanted to investigate, I wouldn't be able to find out your secrets? Yiqing Luo replied, Oh, then go ahead and investigate. Ghost King. This girl, why didn't she play by the rules? Soft ones wouldn't work. The Ghost King decided to use force. His face darkened as he strode forward. He stood right in front of Yiqing Luo. The hand which was condensed with profound energy went straight to Yiqing Luo's neck. Speak. Who on earth did you learn your teleportation technique from? Where is that person? But, just as Ghost King's hand touched the skin of Yiqing Luo's neck, he exerted his strength. His palm was actually holding a handful of air. Where was the girl's figure? The Ghost King's face darkened. Damn it. It was the teleportation secret art again. Yiqing Luo, who had executed the teleportation secret art, was already far behind the palace lord of the secluded palace. Squatting down, the glower flame fan in her hand flipped and a dagger was hidden in the fan handle, pressing against the palace lord of the secluded palace's neck. The palace lord of the secluded palace who was unable to move. Damn it! Chapter 3372. Yiqing Luo expressed that anyway her blink movement secret art had already been seen through. In this place there wouldn't be a fourth person appearing. Then just use it casually. She could also use it to train her blink movement secret art which she hadn't used for a long time. She pressed against the palace lord's neck and lifted him up. I'll borrow you for a while. Palace lord of secluded darkness palace. Use it, what if he accidentally died? Yiqing Luo replied, oh, don't worry about this. You still have some value so I won't let you die. Palace lord of secluded darkness palace. So she didn't care about him if he had no value? Yiqing Luo replied, oh, I won't. You've sent my Xian into the darkness array, how could I possibly not care about you? Palace lord of secluded darkness palace. What was with that sinister tone? Forget it, let's not bother about him. No matter how much Palace lord of secluded darkness palace was thinking, he was still taken as a hostage by Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo. Ghost King was infuriated. Yiqing Luo displayed her blink movement secret art and instantly disappeared from his sight. She was simply making fun of him. His face was gloomy and his malicious eyes stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo had a hostage in her hands so she wasn't worried that Ghost King would launch another attack. She stared at Ghost King as she slowly squinted her eyes. Ghost King was so persistent about how she learnt the blink movement secret art. Moreover, he said the same thing that Ghost Doctor said when he saw her executing the blink movement secret art. King of Thieves' ultimate secret art, blink movement secret art. Ghost Doctor's tone and expression back then was filled with nostalgia. And Ghost King was the same. Moreover, he seemed to have confirmed that she had learnt the blink movement secret art from the King of Thieves. But from Ghost King's tone, she didn't feel that Ghost King wanted to know the whereabouts of the King of Thieves and then hold a ceremony to acknowledge him. That tone sounded. It was obvious that they looked like enemies. This wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was she knew the blink movement secret art and it wasn't taught by the King of Thieves. But the Azure Dew Bracelet's Purgatory Tower's first floor reward. Of course, this was something that Yiqing Luo would never reveal even if she was beaten to death. Let him go. Ghost King stared at the dagger in Yiqing Luo's hand, his malicious eyes flickered slightly. Yiqing Luo smiled, you can't. Yiqing Luo. The Ghost King's gloomy eyes darkened. Let him go and tell me the whereabouts of the person who taught you the secret method of teleportation. Then I'll open the exit of the dark formation and let the venerable sovereign out. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. If the condition was to let her go, she might not be moved. But, the Ghost King said, to let Xian out, even if he deeply believed in Xian's strength. Yiqing Luo was still worried about him. She thought about how he had set up a dark formation specifically to target her, and how he had fought against the formation in order to rush out to save her. She felt as if there were thin needles piercing her heart one by one. Therefore, the Ghost King's words moved her. Ghost King had been paying attention to Yiqing Luo's expression. Seeing that her expression had loosened, his lips curled as he increased the temptation. Young lady, this dark formation is a trap specially set up by the secluded palace to target the venerable sovereign. No matter how strong the venerable sovereign is, he would still be injured in the formation. Or perhaps because of you he might even lose his life. Chapter 3373. Yiqing Luo's eyes dimmed. Her long, curly eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings. She raised her eyes and fixed her gaze on Ghost King. The expression on her face was cold and solemn. Her pair of charming eyes were covered with frost, filled with a biting cold intent. Why should I believe you? She finally compromised. The light in the eyes of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace, who was being restrained, dimmed. If possible. He hoped that Yiqing Luo would not be tempted and use him as a hostage to continue to threaten Ghost King. But Ghost King used Dmo Xian as a bait. It was very clear. If Ghost King used her life as a bargaining chip, Yiqing Luo would absolutely not be moved. But once it involved Dmo Xian, Yiqing Luo chose to compromise. Ghost King laughed, that's the right choice. An unimportant person's whereabouts in exchange for the safety of you and Dmo Xian, this pair of lovers, it's worth it. He stared at Yiqing Luo. Hand him over to me. Tell me, where is the person who taught you the blink movement secret art? Yiqing Luo was indifferent. Open the entrance of the dark array. I want to see Xian safe and sound before I can be assured. Ghost King's face sunk. Young lady, you don't believe me, then why should I believe you? Yiqing Luo sneered. Don't tell me you're afraid of my Xian? Worried that after Xian comes out, you won't be able to control the both of us? Ghost King's malicious eyes flashed a chilly glint. Young lady, goading me is useless. But don't mix me with that bunch of cowards. I, Ghost King, have never been afraid of anyone since I was born. Saying that, he moved his palms. Rolling profound chi was like a raging wave rolling in his palms. Soon after, the sky above the entire graveyard was shrouded in pitch-black clouds. The yin chi around the cemetery started to distort. Just like the time when the dark array appeared. Black chi curled and in midair, it gradually formed a tiny crack. That crack slowly widened. Yiqing Luo stared at the crack. Earlier, Xian was sucked in by this crack. Just as a fist-sized hole opened up in the crack, a figure suddenly appeared. A loud shout exploded in his ears. No. Don't let Venerable Sovereign come out. Otherwise everything will be for naught. Yiqing Luo's entire heart was placed on the crevice. Suddenly the explosive roar was right next to his ears. It was so loud that her eardrums were buzzing. At this moment, the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace, whose neck was pressed by Yiqing Luo, surged a powerful black chi in his eyes as he attacked towards that crevice. The black aura instantly filled up the fist-sized crack. He blinked again. The crack disappeared in midair. The twisting black chi that pervaded the air also gradually dispersed. The Ghost King's movements were interrupted by this sudden power. The backlash caused him to feel a tightness in his chest, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face darkened as he glared at the Palace Master of Gloomy Palace. What are you doing? The Overlord must die in the dark array. If the Overlord comes out, none of us will be able to bring Yiqing Luo back to the Palace of Darkness. Which means that the mission has failed. The Palace Lord of Gloomy Palace panted lightly as he fearlessly drew a wound on his neck with the dagger. I don't care what relationship you have with that blink movement secret method. But this is a mission. I can't let you destroy everything. When Ghost King heard that, he couldn't help but laugh. Are you sure you're doing this for the mission or because of jealousy? The Palace Lord of Gloomy Palace was stunned. Chapter 3374. The Ghost King sneered, Palace Master, my cooperation with the Palace of Darkness is only verbal. I will help you only because I owe your master a favor. However, it doesn't mean that you can represent the Palace of Darkness and tell me what to do. The face of the Palace Master of the Secluded Darkness Palace was covered by the black cloak, so his expression could not be seen clearly. But from his emotions I can feel it. At this moment, his heart was in chaos and apprehension. He could not refute the Ghost King. His body was extremely tense. Even the dagger at his neck scratched his skin. It was as if he didn't feel any pain. His eyes were fixed in the direction of the Ghost King. The Ghost King's expression darkened. He raised his hand and wiped away the blood at the corner of his lips. If you continue to cause trouble, I won't want your life anymore. Yiqing Luo felt the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace stiffen. Is this the rhythm of internal strife? Actually, in Yiqing Luo's heart, because the Palace Lord of the Secluded Darkness Palace had destroyed the entrance of the dark array which was opened, she was rather furious. She narrowed her eyes and tightened her grip on his collar. Did you hear that? If you destroy the entrance to the dark array formation, you won't be a qualified hostage anymore. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace. Don't make it sound like he really wanted to be a hostage. Yiqing Luo expressed that being her hostage was better than being tied to the ground. If she was not careful, she might even fall into the deep abyss which was split open by the Ghost King. That bottomless abyss. Falling down was much worse than being a hostage. So, being a hostage or something, at least I can still live for now, right? Palace Lord of Netherworld Palace. He still didn't want Dmo Xian to walk out of the dark array. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. She hoped that Dmo Xian had died in the dark array which was filled with traps. Never to appear in front of Yiqing Luo ever again. Ghost King glanced coldly at the Palace Lord of Gloomy Palace and finally looked at Yiqing Luo. The expression on his face was extremely cold. Little girl, you'd better tell me where that person is after this or else I'll make you regret what you've done today. After a pause he continued, Even if Dizun is by your side, I still have the ability to make you regret it. His words fell. He spread his palms open once again, and his majestic dark force covered the entire graveyard. The dark clouds rolled again. The black gas rose again. Yi Qing Luo clasped the palace lord's hand tightly. A trace of suspicion flashed across her half-closed eyes. What kind of enmity did this ghost king have with the king of thieves? He had a feeling. His obsession with the king of thieves was very deep. They were so deep that they didn't hesitate to go against their cooperation with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. He was so deep that he didn't hesitate to give up the 2 divine artifacts he wanted. But, just as the crack reappeared in midair, it slowly widened. The sky above the entire graveyard suddenly flashed with an extremely dazzling golden light. Immediately after, Yi Qing Luo's profound jade heart was like a raging inferno as it fiercely burned for a moment. In the pet space, the breaths of a few companions came. He could also vaguely sense an extremely familiar aura rapidly approaching. Yi Qing Luo's eyes suddenly lit up. This was Kitty. It was Kitty's aura. She had signed a life-and-death blood contract with Kitty. Within a certain distance, they could sense each other's presence. In other words, Kitty was nearby. How did she find her way here? This place was a trap set by the Palace of Darkness. It was the land of illusion. Yi Qing Luo was extremely dazed. Chapter 3375. Yi Qing Luo didn't know what that flash of golden light was. Ghost King and the Palace Lord of the Secluded Palace knew. This golden light represented. This illusory land had been broken by someone. Even the suppression on Yi Qing Luo's psyche had been broken. Ghost King's brows creased tightly. How could this be possible? How could this be possible? How could there be anyone in this lowly lower realm who could break the illusory land he had created? And because of this shock, it made the cracks in the dark array which were gradually opening up close again. The next moment, the truth which Ghost King couldn't believe appeared in front of his eyes, only to see the boundary of the graveyard. Out of nowhere, a slender black silhouette appeared, directly pouncing towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. That petite and slender figure was like a kitten. Yi Qing Luo was still holding the dagger which had slipped out from the glower flame fan and holding onto a hostage. Seeing the figure pouncing over, she didn't even hesitate. She directly threw off the hostage and kept the glower flame fan. Opening her arms, she hugged that figure into her arms. Sister. A sweet little voice with a kitten's coquettish tone. The girl in Yi Qing Luo's arms rubbed her head fiercely in her arms. The 2 black ears on her head popped out. The black tail swayed excitedly. Yi Qing Luo hugged the girl in her arms and gently rubbed her little head. Indeed, Kitty was here. But to be able to break this illusory land and destroy the array which was suppressing her psyche, it shouldn't be done by Kitty Li. Where there was Kitty Li, there would be Zhou Mo. Where there was Zhou Mo, there would be Ghost Martial Artist. So, Ghost Martial Artist was here? You are. Ghost King looked at this cute girl in astonishment. When his vision was fixed on the ears on Kitty Li's head and that tail which was wagging excitedly, his expression changed. Beast human race. How could there be beast humans in Nirvana realm? You're the one who locked Kitty's beloved sister in this damned place and bullied her. Kitty Li, who heard the voice, suddenly popped out from Yi Qing Luo's arms and stared fiercely at Ghost King. His hair stood on end. It even showed its sharp teeth. Ghost King stared at Kitty Li's teeth, then at Kitty Li's hands, which had transformed into cat claws. He was extremely shocked. You're a beast man, how did you come to the lower realm? None of your business. Kitty Li's sensitive nose detected the blood stench on Yi Qing Luo, and immediately her pair of quick-witted eyes turned into a whirlpool, deep and serene. Her sweet voice inexplicably revealed a bit of coldness. How dare you hurt Kitty's sister? Kitty will pay with your life. With that, she suddenly turned to the other side of the graveyard and shouted, Zhou Mo! Come out, Kitty. The Ghost King's expression became increasingly sinister. He felt, barging into the place he had transformed into. It wasn't just a single beast man, there were others. Moreover, there were many of them. The majestic aura was not something that a lower realm like the Nirvana realm could possess. Oh no! The hostage palace mistress of Secluded Palace heard Kitty Li's call and her tone turned flustered. It's them, they're here. Yi Qing Luo's helpers are here. Helpers? Ghost King frowned. What helpers? What's going on? Palace mistress of Secluded Palace didn't answer him. There was no need to answer. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.